Hi. So today we're going to address nakedness or nudism or half nude in history in the relation to Native Americans and how the concept is not given as a value neutral. It's generally done in a way that's bigotry, that if you are this, it's proof that you're primitive or you have no culture or no thing, or, because I think there's a feeling that, even if America did bad things, we gave them Western culture because they didn't have any, civilization. So we helped them. And you look at they have no clothes on, as if somehow that's a bad state of being. And I disagree with that. I was a nudist. I still kind of am, but I actually lived for 2 years at 2 different, a year each, nudist resorts in Florida. And I've been to other nudist resorts. I would say that was an interesting experience because for me, it was the first time that I was able to interact with people where you can't just look at them and know like how much money they have. Because normally when you look at people, you can tell by what kind of clothes, also what music they may like or what region maybe of a country or something. But when they literally don't have anything, you can't even tell foreigners practically from a non-foreigner. You can't just. Yeah, so it was unique. And also, it was the most I've ever felt sort of like welcomed and not judged in my life. Like it really, because people are old and young and whatever, and people have good bodies and ugly bodies, and everyone just interacts like none of that matters. It's an absolutely amazing experience. That's also why I already would have understood that nakedness doesn't equal anything. There's no, for me, there's no negative connotation, which I know it's just some people there are. And I also wanted to address this because, and we do a lot of stuff, and we're going to do more, but about prehistory and history, and not just the Americas. We're going to go all over the place, but there's all over the world, people make value judgments of people that are hunter-gatherers in areas that were warm and non-Western, not having clothes or minimal clothes, and then saying, oh, well, see, they're savages. Yeah. And on that note, I think it addresses, to me, right now we have, America getting its 250th, anniversary. And so I feel like that's relevant because it's those ideas from then that are still lingering today. It's this propaganda that was given, and we've been, in a sense, lied to. We didn't help these people. I heard one person say, well, at least we gave black people Christianity. Yeah, they had slavery and we took away their culture and all this stuff. But, the benefit was, and I'm like, that is terrible. Even if you believe in Christianity, that's a terrible way to think. Anyways.
Oh, yeah. Especially when you put into context everything they lost and suffered along the way.
Yeah. Well, and what does their culture have to do with them being Christian?
Yeah.
You cut their hair? You think you didn't let them have their own language? What does that have to do with being Christian? They can't wear certain beads or do this or do that. Anyways, to me, that's all just nonsense. But so to me, America, like I said, is celebrating its 250th anniversary. But to me, I don't celebrate the 4th of July as many people. I don't love America. I know that makes some people but to me, because I understand what this America is. Is America other people? Or is it like this propaganda that we've been forced and indoctrinated into that we're supposed to love? Or is it behaviors? If the behavior is supposed freedom, I'm okay. I love freedom. But we haven't really had that. Or equality, which we also really haven't had. So to me, I think that if we put it towards an ideal, America's never lived up to it. So there's nothing to me to love. They haven't done what they're supposedly do. And to me, so I'm both ashamed of its past, and then currently, with Trump, and I feel like this backward sliding. We were kind of going towards a more equal union or whatever, and care for people and more respect for other cultures. And then the exact opposite is happening. I mean, Trump is literally anti-DEI, which to him is anything not white Christian male.
Yep.
And I'm ashamed of it. So I don't feel like America's celebrating. I feel like America's dying from my personal perspective. All the hopes that could have been are just the goals are gone. So to me, America's professed goals may sound nice. Freedom, liberty for all. But its reality has been bad. Oppression and injustice for most. Never forget that slavery still existed on the 4th of July until 1865. So we need to challenge the pseudo-freedom of supposedly 1776. And I'm going to have you read a little bit. And the reason I'm having you do this today for our video is because I feel it's relevant to why people view, in a sense, natives or indigenous people of the Americas as being primitive, and then looking for factors like their nakedness or half nakedness as believed proof, to support these bigoted views, and then of course oppression of them. So go ahead and read it.
The phrase merciless Indian savages appears in the United States Declaration of Independence, drafted by Thomas Jefferson and ratified in 1776. Historically, this language served as colonial propaganda by dehumanizing Native Americans and describing their warfare as the undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. The phrase was used to erase tribal sovereignty and justify westward expansion and systemic violence.
Yeah, and you can go ahead real quick and say any thoughts you have on that, because I've now given mine, if you'd like. If not, we'll just go right to the video.
No, it's pretty spot on. It really catalyzes what we see going forward, especially looking at this map you have on screen. Like there was cooperation between some tribes and different Euro-American powers, whether it's the French or the British, and some even allied with the Spanish further south. But we see it from 1776 moving forward, as soon as the United States came into being, just this pattern of broken promises and further being pushed westward. There's a lot of people, countless numbers of people were hurt.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's a tragic story, like when you really get into the weeds of what actually happened.
It is.
2026 marks the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, a milestone likely to be celebrated with the familiar spectacle of the 4th of July, block parties, legal or illegal fireworks, and the also comforting barbecue. It's also a time to look back on the past 250 years and reflect on American independence. But before we get the party started, let's look at the document that has since inspired every freedom lover's favorite holiday. Yes, all the greatest hits. Decent respect to the opinions of mankind. Very nice. All men are created equal. Classic line. Wait a minute. Merciless Indian savages? The one and only time Native Americans are mentioned? Now, this has really got me thinking. Can a national identity built on the erasure of Native genocide ever fully separate itself from propaganda? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do you remember reciting this mandatory allegiance before school? Well, maybe not those born after us millennials. America often frames democracy as one of its greatest achievements. The irony of it is that natives were the ones to inspire it. Well, obviously not the merciless Indian savages line. Even though American Indians were seen as primitive, we've practiced representative governance well before the American Revolution. Around 1142, according to many scholars, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, previously referred to as the Iroquois Confederacy, was formed, establishing relationships between tribal nations, which resulted in a democracy that has functioned for centuries.
But I felt like that's a good place to start from. And
oh yeah, that is, because it helps put everything we're going to talk about into context.
That's the point. Because because otherwise we're just talking about, is it okay for people to have clothing? Well, there's a deeper thing. Just like when people address and archaeologists challenge them, say hunter-gatherers just meaning primitive. Or even sometimes I feel academics sometimes say hunter-gatherers and think that means equalitarian and no chieftains, which also that's wrong.
No, like we've talked about multiple times. No, just because you're a hunter-gatherer, that's just your subsistence strategy.
It's subsistence strategy, and that's right. It's just a subsistence strategy. Just as to me, nakedness or half naked, loincloth wearing, whatever, is a clothing strategy, because it's generally done not in the Arctic where it's freezing. It's generally done where it's down in the tropics and warm. So it's not like it doesn't make sense. So
nakedness or being minimally clothed was a clothing strategy and did not mean simple culture. Just like hunter-gatherer is a subsistence strategy. Both had diverse cultural lifestyles.
Right. And then I have an art I made of the Chumash, which have diverse and complex culture in a sense, but often the men were naked and women were basically half naked and children were usually naked. So it doesn't mean that they don't have culture. And we're going to read a lot about the Chumash to kind of like understand what their culture is. But we're going to finish the blog. So go ahead and read what it says here.
Just as people wrongly think a subsistence strategy like hunter-gatherer means a limited style of culture, when it does not, because there is a diverse array of cultural styles that can and have operated under hunter-gatherer lifestyles, so too is there a diverse array of cultural styles that can be involved with a clothing strategy or style of being naked or partially clothed. Neither hunter-gatherer nor being naked or partially clothed inherently means simple culture. They are just different lifestyles. Two groups that were hunter-gatherer fishers and not agricultural, yet both were complex societies. The Chumash people in Southern California, who could be naked, and the Calusa people in Southern Florida, who were minimally clothed, even partly naked. I will address both the Chumash and the Calusa cultures later to grasp their cultural complexity and thus dispel the notion of simplicity associated clothing styles or subsistence strategies such as nakedness or hunter-gatherer lifestyles.
Right. And then I added a picture here for people to see what supposed advanced culture like the Sumerians also did nakedness. And I added males here. There's also women that were naked, but some people try to attach women being naked to only things that were religious, such as fertility. And these are not exactly fertilities per se related. There's more going on here culturally. And so that's why I feel like it's important. This is the Sumerians on top, and then the one at the bottom is a Egyptian. But it shows that the Egyptian and the Sumerians, almost the same time frame, are almost doing the similar thing.
Nudity for religion and nudity for war. Nakedness as sacredness and nakedness to humiliate. In ancient times, sexual explicitness in drama, poetry, art, and sculpture was not regulated by the state. In 3000 BCE, the Sumerians in the Tigris-Euphrates Valley of Mesopotamia accepted sex as a natural part of life. Terracottas from this well-integrated civilization graphically depict vaginal intercourse, anal intercourse, prostitution, and same-sex sex. Sumerian literature candidly portrayed human love as intimately connected to both sexual pleasure and procreation. The Sumerians had no word for nudity, although they had a breathtaking number of terms for the sexual organs. Unlike the Romans and Greeks, who glorified the phallus, the Sumerians paid more attention to the female genitalia. In Sumerian poetry, the vulva is often equated with sweet foods. In later Babylonian love poetry was often highly erotic. In ancient Mesopotamia, depictions of nudity in art primarily conveyed subjugation, vulnerability, or ritual roles rather than idealization or normalcy, with clothing serving as a marker for status and social order from the Uruk period onward, circa 4000 to 3100 BCE. In ancient Near Eastern civilizations, nudity in iconography often connotated vulnerability, divinity, or eroticism, with Mesopotamian female figurines from the 4th millennium BCE portraying nude goddesses associated with fertility cults. Seals from sites like Gursu and Susa illustrate processions of naked male prisoners, symbolizing defeat and humiliation in warfare contexts, a motif recurring through Akkadian and later periods. Servants and laborers often appear nude in reliefs and cylinder seals, contrasting with draped elites, kings, and deities, underscoring nudity's association with lowly or captive positions rather than everyday attire. Female nudity emerges in terracotta figurines from domestic and temple deposits, 3rd through 2nd millennium BCE, sometimes linked to or patropaic functions, though interpretations debate eroticism versus protective ritual intent, with no evidence of widespread public nudity as normative. Early male figures, such as a limestone statuette of a bearded man, possibly a priest king, from Uruk, circa 3300 BCE, exhibit nudity in votive contexts, potentially denoting transitional purity or divine intermediary status, though scholarly views vary on whether this reflects heroic nudity or exposure for humility. Deities like Inanna/Ishtar occasionally appear partially nude in later Babylonian reliefs, circa 1800 BCE, but full nudity remains rare for gods, emphasizing clothed divinity. Erotic plaques and nude couples in clay models, circa 1800 BCE, suggest private or cultic sexual symbolism without indicating societal tolerance for public exposure. Overall, Mesopotamian sources, including the absence of a distinct term for nudity in early Sumerian and Akkadian texts, imply clothing as essential for dignity, with nudity situational tied to defeat, labor, or specific rites, rather than a celebrated or casual state. In ancient Egypt, nudity carried less stigma, often denoting youth, fertility, or practicality, particularly from the pre-dynastic period, circa 6000 through 3150 BCE, through the Old Kingdom, circa 2686 through 2181 BCE, where tomb art shows children naked until puberty, boys around age 12, and girls until marriage, as a natural state unassociated with shame. Lower-class laborers, including women in fields or workshops, appear nude or minimally clad in mid-3rd millennium BCE depictions, reflecting functional exposure during toil rather than degradation, while elites donned linen garments for status display. Women in art frequently feature semi-transparent sheaths revealing breasts, symbolizing vitality or erotic appeal in non-elite or divine contexts, as in New Kingdom, circa 1550 through 1070 BCE, tomb scenes, though full nudity for adults remains contextualized to rebirth motifs. Child deities like Harpocrates, Horus the
By the way,
child.
real quick, rebirth in Egyptian is not like reincarnation like in Hindu, where reincarnation, you come back into the same world, maybe as a lesser being or something. And some Native Americans also had that you would come back as a animal, and then when that animal died, a lesser animal, and when that animal died, a lesser animal, and that animal died, a lesser animal, and the bug, and then the lesser bug, and then until you just disappear. This is not that kind of rebirth, because we're going to do rebirth and reincarnation on our next video for mythology. But you understand, Egyptians, what they mean is you do get reborn, but like in another land, almost like heaven or something, or a special place. Just to understand, it's not the rebirth exactly like Hindu or even of the Native American.
Okay. Child deities like Harpocrates, Horus the child, are routinely nude in iconography, evoking rejuvenation and innocence, a secondary symbolism extending to human rebirth in funerary art. Pharaohs and high gods, conversely, are clothed to affirm authority, with nudity rarer for enemies than in Mesopotamia, appearing sporadically in bound captive scenes without consistent humiliation emphasis. Archaeological finds, such as nude figurines in households, support nudity's role in expressing vulnerability or renewal over social debasement, aligning with Egypt's climatic adaptation to light linen and cultural valuation of physical form in life cycle transitions. Unlike Mesopotamian emphasis on nudity as antithesis to order, Egyptian evidence portrays it as integrated to daily and symbolic life, though always secondary, clothed propriety for the powerful.
Right, and so this picture here is relating to Christopher Columbus when he supposedly first met the Tejano Indians, and they're showed as naked. Now, I don't know how accurate it is to them all being naked, because it's not obviously a picture. And he talks about them being real primitive. And just to remind people, I'm going to add the picture again for island of Hispaniola, because the island of Hispaniola had chieftains, several of them, and I kind of questioning exactly. And then, of course, they also fought back. So he says in his little part there that he just takes them over and they're no big deal. Well, if that's true, then why did they fight back, and why did they somewhat succeed in doing that? If you know what I'm saying? Both things can't totally be true. Someone in there is probably not fully telling the truth, nothing but the truth. So, and that's why I think it's hard sometimes, because once again, what we think of as history is often highly propagandized. We don't in America always get, the truth and nothing but the truth. And so we need to, I think, approach, the historical stuff, understanding that, if you're listening to the people that are the ones that take over everything, the colonizers, they're going to give their viewpoint.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's justified. I don't think it's justified to assume that they're giving us the full truth. Now, here's a point, though. Could a colonizer see someone minimally clothed and still feel that's nakedness? Because they're used to wearing like layers of clothing. So I'm just bringing that up. And then, of course, he's going to call Christopher Columbus, and people like, Eurocentric people would have saw them as not having a culture as good as that. They don't have kings. And although, like I said, they did have hierarchy, they did have chieftains, they had paramount chieftains, including, so just reminding people that we need to, not 100% just take the great Christopher Columbus that we celebrate today, who's a slaver and a murderer, his opinion. But go ahead and read that, and just so you can contextualize that picture.
Men and women, naked, look at the strange big boat. When Columbus later wrote of this in his log, they brought us parrots, balls of cotton, spears, and many other things, which they exchanged for the glass beads and hawks' bells.
So pause for a second on even that. So does that match the Declaration of Independence, merciless savages?
No, not at all.
So he meets people, Christopher Columbus, and they don't just immediately start killing him and torturing him or something, or his men, or attacking them. Literally bring gifts. And
they're curious. They want to know who these people are. Like these people, like in these bright colored clothes with these giant boats.
Right. And I'm just saying, but so my point is, I'm just saying they're not being this, because, and there's the thing too, if someone were to come right now and start taking over part of Maine where you live, or Texas where I live, do you think that the people wouldn't, I don't know, fight back? If they fought back, would it be justified for the people trying to take over Maine or Texas to say that we're being savages because we're attacking them for trying to build a house where our home is? I mean, I'm just saying we need to critically think, put it in context. Go ahead.
They willingly traded everything they owned. They were well built, with good bodies and handsome features. They do not bear arms and do not know them. For I showed them a sword. They took it by the edge and cut themselves out of ignorance.
So pause for 1 second. We already know that he's lying in his own things. He says they have spears. I don't know. To say that someone doesn't know what weapons are, right? No arms, you need no weapons, right? Do you just mean no guns?
Yeah,
or no
guns,
metal swords?
Yeah.
I'm just making a comment. So you can see right here, we're already, he himself is contradicting what even he is writing. He's saying they don't have weapons, yet they had spears to give us. Well, I don't know. If I came at you with a spear, wouldn't you be scared?
Yeah, that's a weapon. That's a weapon.
I mean,
it's not a sword. It's not a gun. But it's still an arm.
Correct. I'm just making a comment that you can already hear he's lying, even in his own fucking words. He's already not giving us the truth and nothing but literally bigoted, even though he's admitting that they gave him spears. But
they have no iron. Their spears are made of cane. They would make fine servants. With 50 men, we could subjugate them all and make them do whatever we want.
Right. So at that kind of a statement, with 50 men, we could subjugate them and make them do whatever we want. Who sounds like the merciless savage?
Oh, it's Columbus.
Right.
Like from the get-go.
Right. Here are these, I'm just saying, so it's so disgustingly backward ass, the whole propaganda, and everybody, every time I post stuff, they get mad. The right-wingers come out of the fucking woodwork. They get pissed off on my posts that I say this shit. Yeah. Just like another thing too is they'll say, there was people in slavery in Africa. And like I've never said there was. They'll say, Native Americans were slaves too. And slavers. I've said that as well. I mean, so I feel like they don't even have good faith arguments. They think that I'm somehow denying that. I'm an anarchist. I have no allegiance to anyone slaving anybody, right? So like I've had some of them have said to me on the different social platforms, because I post this stuff about slavery in America, and they'll go, liberals never talk about, because I'm not a liberal, by the way. I'm an anarchist, which is a far leftist socialist. But fine, I don't care. You think I'm a liberal? Whatever. I'm not a conservative, that's for damn sure, and I'm not on the right. So whatever you want to think. I'm closer to a communist than I am to a liberal. But anyway, whatever. You can call me what you want. My point is, they try to say, liberals never say anything about slavery in Islamic countries that happens today. And I'm like, yeah, and conservatives never mention there's slavery in America today. And there's slavery all over the world, including China, which is a supposed communist country, and other countries. And actually the two biggest in the world really are China, India, and Russia. So those aren't even Islamic countries. And how come you don't bring that up? But because I feel like, once again, why did they bring up Islamic countries only? The right I'm talking about. Because they're Christian bigots, nationalists, white supremacists, and they want to attack Islam. They don't care if Christians are doing it. It's about attacking Islam. And you know what? I don't protect Islam either. Yes, I acknowledge that they did that. We will eventually do video because of them bringing that up. I want to do a video on slavery in the modern world because I don't protect anybody doing that. I'm an anarchist. Everyone is equal. Everyone should be free. Period. So anyway, just to clarify that bullshit. And go ahead, before we start reading this, go ahead and far that you've known or read, do you want to make any comments? Go ahead.
Well, I think you're pretty spot on when it comes to the right, or just like general like conservatives, or even, you know, the MAGA Republicans, like getting irritated or like frustrated if you point out a flaw with their perceived idols like Columbus or the founding fathers. Like they'll like make huge comment threads. Like if you point out that some of the founding fathers had slaves, like they'll get so irritated by that, it's almost unreal. But like you said, like if they try to like criticize like a classic liberal or even someone on the further left, like even then when they try to do that, it's almost like a mischaracterization, like a straw man. Like they won't like take the time to actually put in the work to figure out who this, like what this person actually believes, what their values are. And so like they'll do this straw man attack, like, oh well, you know, you criticize the founders, you criticize Columbus, but here you are, you DEI supporting like weirdo or something like that. Like it's something that's not even relevant to the topic, you know.
Totally. And like I said, they don't even understand. I'm an anarchist. I'm not for anybody oppressing anyone. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. If you think I'm pro-slavery, you are the dumbest fucker in the world. What the fuck? Hell fucking no.
Fuck.
I don't think people in prison who are criminals should be fucking forced into fucking slavery. No. Yeah. Anyways, keep
no,
reading.
and it's I'll add another thing before I keep reading, since we're talking about like nakedness and like weird like stereotypical ideas related to freedom and stuff like that. You know, like with the conservatives who are all about celebrating freedom, and don't get me wrong, I like freedom too, and so do you, like you've said.
Yeah.
But like with the conservatives, it's almost like they've forgotten what the United States was supposed to be. It's like they forget about Ellis Island and how this country was built by immigrants. Like it's supposed to be this melting pot. And recently, since the last presidential election, it's almost been getting really pushed by that side that it's supposed to be white. Like if you have immigrants in this country, like you're automatically bad. Like that doesn't really make a lot of sense if you just sit and think about it, because it goes against what this country's like founding values were. At least the noteworthy ones, the ones that should be pursued, like the melting pot concept, you know, like something
or
like
all
that.
Men are created equal. I mean,
exactly.
How can you
or all
say
people are created equal?
They don't get it. Is literally a contradiction. All men are created equal, but only white matters. What the hell? Then you don't believe all people are created equal. Like I said, to me, I don't hate the some of the professed goals, like freedom and equality for all, no one's above the law, you know. So, you know, that stuff sounds good to me as an anarchist. Yeah, that is what of course I have and there should be democracy. I always think it's hilarious when they think I'm not for democracy. Oh no, I'm for democracy. I'm for direct democracy, which is not, and certainly wouldn't be anything to do with, you know, the Electoral College, which I see as an anti-democracy thing. And me personally, because I'm an anarchist and I believe everyone should always be involved, to me, there's never, ever, ever should be a single leader. Not a mayor, not a governor, not a president, not any single leader. We should do things by community vote. And even if they feel like it needs to be, you know, 10 or 50 people, okay, the more people, the better. 100 people. Still, to me, better than one person makes the fucking, you know, no fucking way. Of course, I think that we all should be able to vote. But to me, I am for more involvement, more group decision, no single person saying, this is what says. I just, no. So that part of America, just so people understand, I'll never love. Even if it's liberals get everything they want, it won't be what I want, because as long as they have any single leader, it absolutely will be against what I believe. So that's why saying I'm a liberal to me is kind of stupid.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Naked or partially clothed in indigenous societies. Amonut/Matoaka, also known as Pocahontas, 1596 through 1617, was a Native American woman belonging to the Powhatan people, notable for her association with the colonial settlement at Jamestown, Virginia. She was the daughter of Waun Seneca, circa 1547 through 1618, the paramount chief inherited the leadership of about 4 to 6 tribes of a network of tributary tribes who belonged to the Powhatan Confederacy, or Sunakomaka.
Right, so let's stop real quick for there. So that already tells you something. So, because most people have heard of Pocahontas, but they have this, once again, nonsense story about Pocahontas and not the reality of what her or her people or any of that stuff was. And so a paramount chieftain, just as we already said, there was paramount chieftains, as we talked in our other video, in all of Florida. There's every major group in Florida at the time that the Europeans arrived was chieftains. There was also the Calusa were a paramount chieftain. And like I said, there was paramount chieftains when the people that met, in the Caribbean, met Christopher Columbus and his pillagers. So it already shows that, because this is what the problem is. Some people also have a bigoted view that the people in the Caribbean were more primitive, but the people in Virginia, those natives were more, well, not all, but some people say them as primitive too. But sometimes I feel like they say like, oh, well, those ones were more noble savages, where those other ones, those are the merciful. I mean, it's just,
yeah, I get what you're saying.
Right. You can get the total nonsense. But so also, this is important too, because I told you I am working on a blog too on the Confederacy, because see, confederacies really relate to the Great Lakes or areas that are very closely connected to the Great Lakes. They're not widely everywhere else, which I find to be very interesting. And my personal opinion, like I told you, like the old copper complex, I think the fact that there's multiple lakes, so kind of both close together and yet far enough apart that they can allow different groups to really become centralized, it almost, without the desire for constant warfare, almost inspires confederacies. And as we learned in that other video, right, about the Iroquois Confederacy that inspired democracy for America, that they are also up in that area, and also probably have to do with like I just said this. So I really think it's important, because it shows too that if you're in a different area with different, in a sense, environment, it can affect what happens. But it also goes back to what I've said to you. I feel like people don't realize that this stuff is also culture and was spread culturally. That it's not that every single person that lives by a Great Lake will be a confederacy. It's not the same thing as everybody that is by a whole bunch of fish will end up with a chieftain, or everybody that has a crop will just inherently, I'm talking about in situ, by itself, no influence, become a chieftain, also a paramount chief. These are cultural ideas that spread with people, to me, that I feel like people are missing. They think like all these people are primitive and just certain areas, all chieftains just randomly happen. No, if that's true, also, how come every single place in Florida has it? And if the Caribbean is so backwards compared to the rest of North America, why did they have paramount chief? So I feel like the cultural is denied to accept or promote primitive. And thus, the reason why I think it's important, like we talked about already, if they are primitive, then they're waiting for our wonderful Western culture to save them, which I feel is, of course, nonsense. But I'm just saying, I think that it helps in that lie, that propaganda, that colonialism, settler mentality, that, of course, I'm doing them a favor. And it's like there's some morals or something behind it. Anyway, sorry, you can keep reading now, but I just wanted to address that because I think that this is important. I don't want you to read real fast. And this has to do with something a lot of people know, Pocahontas. There's been little shows and everything, and go ahead and read.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add before I start reading again is that video that we watched earlier, that was only a little clip. The full thing's a little over 15 minutes, and it actually talks about Pocahontas and what we actually know about her.
Well, that's great. I actually did not watch the whole thing. I only was looking for something that was going to get us going to what I want to address.
Yeah, it doesn't talk about her long. It just gives like a really nutshell view of like what we actually know about Pocahontas' life, and it's not this like cheerful, like free-willing Native American girl who led Lewis and Clark across uncharted territory.
Yeah, I think she probably was raped.
Like she was owned by like a French guy.
Yeah.
So just that alone should make people like stop and think. She was owned by a French guy.
Yeah.
Who was
I agree.
also he made her like his wife. So like you saying she was probably raped, I don't think you're too far off.
Right. We're going to read more a little bit about her, but more. I'm trying to give you not just her, but sort of like the cultural values.
Oh yeah.
Both so you can understand how she was viewed, but also about what was really going on. That's why I'm showing she's this princess or whatever of a paramount chieftain clan that had already didn't. This I bring this up too because I hear some people try to say, "Oh well, once the white people, Europeans came, then the natives became confederacies." I'm sorry, she was a confederacy, your tribe, before you ever fucking showed up. So just you get my point. I'm trying to show that no, wrong, no. That's why, like I already told you, I do know about the confederacies that were there in almost not all of them, but most of them in the Great Lakes region were pre any Europeans. So no, maybe more happened because they realized you guys are attacking them, but they were already doing this. You didn't invent it. It wasn't because of you.
Powhatan Confederacy, or Senakomaka, originally only 6 tribes in the late 1500s, which by 1607 grew to about 30 tribes and involving around 10,000 to 15,000 people. They are Algonquin-speaking peoples, encompassing the Tidewater region of what is today the U.S. state of Virginia. The Powhatan lived and supported themselves primarily by growing crops, especially maize, but they also fished and hunted in the Great Forest in their area.
Right.
Villages,
So they're a paramount chieftain. They're a confederacy, which is even more advanced than just a thing, right? Then on top of that, they're hunter-gatherers that also are agriculturists or some version of all the above. Right?
Yeah, so it's an interesting combination of traits.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is going back to, like I said, what I feel that when people put these too simplistic or hard delineated concepts and then apply them, especially to prehistoric groups that we don't totally know, let's say the old copper complex or old copper culture, or other areas, they'll say, "Oh, the hunter-gatherers, so they were egalitarian," and I feel like that is not a good way to assess. We have to be careful because hunter-gatherer doesn't mean that you're not also agriculturalist. Doesn't mean you don't have paramount chieftains. So
there's incredible variability with how they can organize.
Right, and we already seen before in South America, you can have chieftains that also have hunter-gatherers, or also have egalitarianism, or to some point, even remember that one group, even gold, even the special metal, everybody got it equally, and yet they still had chieftains and still had, so that's why I think that we like to make it simple, but I don't agree that is always accurate.
No, villages consisted of many related families organized in tribes led by a chief, Werowance/Werowance or Werowansqua if female, and paid tribute to the paramount chief. All of Virginia's native peoples practiced agriculture. However, Powhatan men were warriors and hunters, while women were gardeners and gatherers. English colonial accounts describe the men, who ran and walked extensively through the woods in pursuit of enemies or game, as tall and lean and possessed of handsome physiques. The women were shorter and strong because of the hours they spent tending crops, pounding corn into meals, gathering nuts, and performing other domestic chores. When the men undertook extended hunts, the women went ahead of them to construct hunting camps. Powhatans made offerings and prayed at sunrise, although they also prayed and made offerings to Pacific gods who were believed to be in control of the harvest. Significantly, one of the major duties of Powhatan priests was controlling the weather. The Powhatan people of Virginia utilized minimalist clothing designed for their hot, humid summers and practical needs. Costume varied.
Sorry, real quick. Practical needs, which is what I told you. Sometimes, because you already said we already read that their culture was not simple.
No, not at all. The paramount chief, 4 to 6 tribes.
Well, and then the one time thing was 30 tribes. With up to 30 tribes with up to 15,000 people, and yet they're practicing minimal clothing and doing it for Damien's stated purpose, practical needs.
Costume varied according to sex, age, and status. A man of high status might wear a skirt-like garment made of fringed deerskin or a mantle of turkey feathers. Werewances, chiefs, wore fine clothes and many ornaments of pearl, rare shell beads, and copper, and the precious metal of the Powhatans.
Right, so right there, doesn't that sound like they're interacting with the old copper complex, or at least that copper from that area?
Yeah, sounds like it. Yeah, because even still by this time, there's still a lot of float copper, just like nuggets in the ground that you can just find by moving around some leaves.
Yeah.
The precious metal of the Powhatans. Rather than practicing total nakedness, adults wore deerskin breechcloths and aprons, while children typically went unclothed until puberty. In colder months, they wore heavier fur cloaks and moccasins. In 1613, she had been kidnapped and held hostage by British colonists before she converted, or was coerced into conversion, to Christianity and married, or was coerced into marriage, John Rolfe, the first native woman.
We're talking about Pocahontas, by the way.
Yep.
Which wasn't exactly her name, but go ahead.
The first native woman to convert to Christianity, the third Virginian native woman to marry a colonist. She was later taken to London, England, where she died of pneumonia, tuberculosis, or perhaps dysentery at around 21 or 22 years old. John Rolfe later used his late wife's image to market his Virginia tobacco. Ever since, Pocahontas has been romanticized and mythologized in more advertisements, as well as books, plays, poems, movies, cartoons, and dolls. Pocahontas was actually only her nickname. She was formerly named Matoaka, and she was born under the name Amanuti. Many of the accounts of Pocahontas are mythology, not truth, and reveal more about the European authors than their indigenous native subject. Pocahontas is a metaphor for the author's position on the colonial project. 10 or 11 when she first met Europeans, Pocahontas is almost always presented as an adolescent in these encounters. She was called Little Wanton by Europeans shocked by her nakedness.
And why was she naked? Hold on, why was she naked?
It was practicality.
Well, and also because they said what? Remember we read in her tribe that it said, while children typically went unclothed until puberty. So they were saying that she was doing something sexual, little wanton. She's tempting them with her nakedness.
But she's only 10 or 11.
Right, so they're pedophiles. Yeah. And it was totally in her culture normal for all children until puberty to not wear clothing. Good.
Native children only wore clothes in winter. She entered history as the sexual objectification of native defeat in colonial conquest. Continuing, the body of Pocahontas and the body of America are the same contested site in the colonial enterprise. Pocahontas, the person, has long since...
By the way, if you feel you want to say something, always feel free.
Pocahontas, the person, has long since disappeared into what Bell calls the colonized body, filled with other voices and purposes, a screen for projecting fantasies of America's founding by Europeans. The Indian princess can't speak for herself now, so we should be wary of what is said in her name. The most famous incident in the myth of Pocahontas, her rescue of the soldier of fortune by John Smith from certain death, is questionable. Did it even happen? If it did, was Smith misinterpreting it? Smith, after all, didn't tell this pivotal piece of the Pocahontas legend until 1624, years after Pocahontas was dead.
Oh, how convenient.
No, he hadn't mentioned the incident in an earlier account of his time among the Powhatan, and he evidently...
Now that should make you think, right?
Oh, yeah. And he evidently linked the idea of being rescued by ladies of high rank so much he claimed it happened to him on 3 different occasions.
See, now we know he's lying, right?
Oh, yeah.
Flat out lying. And yet we have beautiful, cartoons and magazines that promote this horseshit.
Oh yeah, and it's not just Pocahontas. Later on, like towards the 17 and 1800s with Sacagawea.
Yes,
it's a lot of the same thing, that like highly mythologized woman, like this virtuous, noble Native American girl who leads people through the frontier. It's a lot of the same thing.
Right.
AI overview. Naked or partially clothed indigenous societies often possess complex social stratification, where status is conveyed through elaborate body art, jewelry, scarification, and specialized hairstyles rather than clothing. Historically, near complete nudity was common in warm climate hunter-gatherer and early agricultural societies, often coexisting with distinct social hierarchies hierarchies, such as warrior castes or specialized labor groups. Key aspects of stratification in naked/minimally clothed societies. Costly signaling. Body modification, scars, painting, piercing, requires significant time and skill, acting as a costly signal of prestige.
Right, and you certainly want to cover all that up with clothing.
No, and like out of all of those, I'd say like scarring. That's like one of the costliest things to do because that can go really badly depending on how large their scars are.
Right.
Warfare/social organization. In some cultures, specialized warriors or weapon makers, castes, were created in stratified societies where individuals went naked. Gender stratification. In some cases, such as in West Africa, the lack of clothing for female slaves and servants served to mark their low status compared to adorned higher status women. Ritual status. In many African ethnic groups, nudity was associated with ritual practices such as infertility rites, e.g. in Ghana, where nakedness was part of the traditional social order. Examples of stratified indigenous cultures with minimal clothing include Igbo people of Nigeria. Historically, Igbo people wore minimal traditional attire. Elaborately decorated bodies of women marked their high status as eligible brides. Conversely, young men with lower status were often entirely naked while laboring. Anang people, Nigeria. Traditionally, children and young adults were naked or wore minimal waist beads until marriage. Status was displayed through body adornment and adherence to traditional marriage rituals, such as brides dancing nude to celebrate their status. The Himba people, Namibia. These herders of the Kayo-Coveld Desert maintain strict social structures, with skin-colored clothing and complex hairstyles indicating marital status and age, often leaving the upper body exposed. Zulu people, South Africa. Traditionally, Zulu girls participating in the reed dance are bare-chested, a practice that signifies status, virginity/status within the royal household. Samburu and Turkana, Kenya. These groups traditionally dress for their hot climate, often working or bathing while completely naked, with social distinctions defined by specialized adornment rather than garments. AI overview. Several indigenous cultures in the Americas, particularly in tropical and subtropical regions, practiced minimal clothing, often described as nudity by Europeans, while maintaining highly stratified societies. These societies frequently utilized body paint, jewelry, and specific adornments to signify social status rather than covering the body with textiles. These cultures, while sometimes appearing naked to early European observers, were often socially complex, politically organized, and strictly stratified. Amazonian region, Brazil and South America. Many indigenous peoples of the Amazon, such as the Yanomami, maintained cultural traditions involving minimal dress suitable for hot, humid climates. These societies often had cleared internal hierarchies and gender-specific roles. Pacific Northwest coast tribes, groups such as the Tlingit, Haida, Tsimshian, while using clothing for protection, lived in coastal regions where, prior to extensive European contact, men might wear little clothing in summer, particularly while fishing. Their society was highly stratified into nobles, commoners, and slaves. Coastal Southwest natives. Early European explorers, such as Alejandro Malaspina in 1791, observed that natives in the Southwest California coast frequently wore little to no clothing, which caused discomfort among the European visitors. Indigenous people of Florida. In the pre-colonial, warm, and humid environment, they frequently wore minimal clothing made from natural materials. Indigenous people in Florida, such as the Calusa and Timucua, historically wore minimal clothes, often breechcloths for men and skirts for women, due to the hot, humid climate, appearing half naked to European observers. Minimal clothing was practical for the hot, humid climate and tropical environment, allowing for freedom of movement and easy maintenance. Cultural context of nakedness. Prior to European arrival, many indigenous populations did not associate nudity with shame or sin. Stratification was often displayed through regalia, specialized items like feathered headdresses, masks, or ceremonial items worn only by individuals of high status or specific roles. Pre-Columbian Caribbean. Early reports and artistic depictions depictions often showed indigenous inhabitants of the Caribbean and Central America as naked or next to naked, despite having complex social structures.
Right. So what are your thoughts on that? And did you already, think the way that we've been talking about, or did any of this, information help, make you critically think more?
Well, like for the minimal clothing, I almost sort of expect that for the tropical climates. Like it's not only practical, but what surprised me, and especially with Africa, just seeing how many cultures have these similar views toward nakedness. Like it's not a taboo for them, especially in these hot tropical climates. Like children, whether in North America, Africa, or elsewhere, if you could travel back in time and live among these different groups, don't be surprised if you see naked or youths, whether boys or girls, almost or completely naked. A lot of these groups, that's not a taboo for them. And even getting into adolescent and adult years, men and women, they rarely wear clothing. But if they're a stratified complex society, which a lot of these are, especially in the Caribbean, Southern Florida, or the Pacific Northwest, you can expect to see different regalia, or in colder climates, up in the Pacific Northwest, fancier textiles during winter, worn by the nobles or people of higher status. It's pretty cool, seeing the variation between all these different regions and cultures, but seeing the similarity also.
Right. And I hope that other people get that too. And also, like I said, to get out of this thinking that the Native Americans, no matter where they were, the Caribbean, the South, the North, the East, the West, they weren't South America. They weren't primitive in culture-wise. Just because they dressed different or didn't use clothing the way Europeans did, that had nothing to do with them having primitive cultures.
No, and even the cultures that didn't wear a lot of clothes, sometimes for practicality, but other times they had other ways of showing social status or decorating themselves, like with feathers, body paint, tattoos, scars, other things like that. They had their own cultural aesthetics and standards besides traditional textiles like we're used to nowadays.
Exactly. And so that's why I feel because I know some people are oh, they just were loincloth wearing savages. You don't even know what the fuck you're talking about. No. Literally, that's just propaganda, bigotry, nonsense.
Yeah. The time it would take for a European to make a set of clothes, not even fancy clothes, just basic clothes. Compare that to the time it would take for somebody to scarify their body or decorate it with paint and dress up with regalia, a complex feather headdress or something like that. That can take hours, but with hours to years, depending on how complex the scars are, how complex the body paint is, the materials you need to make the paint.
Oh yeah.
Or where you're getting the feathers from or the ornaments.
It's just ethnocentrism in a sense.
Yeah.
Or xenophobia, whatever it's called, or just people that are different. But the problem I have is not just that the Europeans back, the 15 to 1700s or something. It's that we still talk this way, especially to me. Yeah. It's not very common for academic, especially in the pseudo-archaeology and the pseudo-history people, or the conspiracy theory people. They constantly view anyone that's hunter-gatherer or even loincloth as being primitive. Mm-hmm. And that I often say, well, how can Göbekli Tepe be made by hunter-gatherers? Those are primitive people. You're like, oh my God, what the fuck are you talking about?
No, there's this one tribe in Africa, and they're interesting because they value red ochre. But the thing that they do with red ochre is a lot of the men and women, they're almost naked. They have beads, they have regalia, things like that. But a lot of the women are topless. But what they do is they paint themselves and they dye their hair in red ochre paste.
Right, yeah.
For them, it's ritual. It has to do with
their... I can't remember off my head what group that is, but I absolutely know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's ritual to them. They think it has social value, but it's also practical. They use it as a sunscreen and bug repellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just that looks complex to me.
Yeah, it's complex. I agree.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying I'm hoping that this video will make people expand their thinking past this. I feel like I told you before, cultures are varied. It's our understanding that's limited.
Yeah, exactly.
So now now, like we said at the beginning picture, and then the beginning of reading you did, that we're going to address the Chumash more in depth, just so we can understand more that the cultures that people think were primitive or not.
Chumash people. Because the climate in Chumash territory is mild, the people's clothing was very simple. Men generally wore nothing more than a string around the waist. From it, they hung tools and food. Sometimes they wrapped an animal skin around their hips if the weather was cool. If it was very cold, they might wear cloaks made from animal skins. Only the rich and powerful wore bear and other fur. An ankle-length fur cloak was a sign of a man's high position in the village. The poor wore clothes made from grasses and shedded bark. Women wore 2 aprons. A large one hung from the waist and back, and a smaller one from the front. They made these of buckskin, shredded bark, or grass, and hung a fringe of shells from them. Although people usually went barefoot, sometimes they wore deerskin socks or fiber sandals. Moccasins were used only on special occasions. Although nudity was prevalent in the warm climate, there was some use of warmer clothing for winter and an abundance of ceremonial attire, displaying considerable social significance. Men wore a wraparound buckskin kilt when they wore anything. Men, while naked, would wear belts that could hold tools, and when cold, would wear capes, sometimes still while nude. Chumash women would often wear a skirt made of tulle, seagrass, or shredded willow or sycamore bark. To hold the skirt down against the wind, they would attach small bitumen glue globules to the ends of the fibers. Historic AI overview. Historically, Chumash people in California lived in a warm climate where everyday nudity or minimal clothing was common. Men often went nude, while women wore 2-piece deerskin or plant fiber skirts. Clothing was primarily worn for protection, such as deerskin scapes or feather robes during colder weather, rather than for modesty. The Chumash are a Native American people of the central and southern coastal regions of California, in portions of what is now Kern, San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, Ventura, and Los Angeles counties, extending from Morro Bay in the north to Malibu in the south to Mount Pinos in the east. Their territory includes 3 of the Channel Islands: Santa Cruz, Santa Rosa, and San Miguel. The smaller island of Anacapa was likely inhabited seasonally due to the lack of a consistent water source. Indigenous peoples have lived along the California coast for at least 11,000 years. Sites of the Milling Stone Horizon date from 7,000 to 4,500 BCE and show evidence of a subsistence system focused on the processing of seeds with metates and manos. During that time, people used bipointed bone objects and line to catch fish and began making beads from shells of the marine olive snail, Calianax bipolicata. The name Chumash means bead maker or seashell people, being that they originated near the Santa Barbara coast. The Chumash tribes near the coast benefited most with the close juxtaposition of a variety of marine and terrestrial habitats. Intensive upwelling in coastal waters and intentional burning of the landscape made the Santa Barbara Channel region one of the most resource-abundant places on the planet. The Chumash lived in over 150 independent villages, speaking variations of the same language. Much of their culture consisted of basketry, bead manufacturing, and trading, cuisine of local abalone and clam, herbalism, using local herbs to produce teas and medicinal reliefs, rock art, and the scorpion tree. The scorpion tree was significant to the Chumash, as shown in its arborglyph, a carving depicting a 6-legged creature with a headdress including a crown, 2 spheres. The shamans participated in the carving, which was used in observations of the stars and in parts of the Chumash calendar. The Chumash resided between the Santa Ynez Mountains and the California coasts, where a bounty of resources could be found. The tribe lived in an area of 3 environments: the interior, the coast, and the northern Channel Islands. The interior is composed of the land outside the coast and spanning the wide plains, rivers, and mountains. The coast covers the cliffs, land close to the ocean, and the areas of the ocean from which the Chumash harvested. The northern Channel Islands lie off the coast of the Chumash territory. All of the California coastal interior has a Mediterranean climate due to the incoming ocean winds. The mild temperatures, save for the winter, made gathering easy. During the cold months, months, Chumash harvested what they could and supplemented their diets with stored foods. What villagers gathered and traded during the seasons changed depending on where they resided. With coasts populated by masses of species of fish and land densely covered by trees and animals, the Chumash had a diverse array of food. Abundant resources and a winter rarely harsh enough to cause concern meant the tribe lived a sedentary lifestyle in addition to a subsistence existence. Villages in the three aforementioned areas contained remains of sea mammals, indicating that trade networks existed for moving materials throughout the Chumash territory. The Chumash were connected to extensive trade networks reaching into modern-day Arizona, from which pottery and textiles were traded in exchange for shell beads.
So pause for a second. So not only were they themselves trading with each other and had an advanced culture, they were also trading outside their region, just showing once again they were not waiting for the great Europeans to give them, cultural ideas.
No, they already had a complex trade system.
Right.
Very complex trade system.
You already talked about before that's actually more common in the Americas than the opposite. Than some kind of isolation was not the norm.
No, it's very it's surprisingly common, even going back thousands of years. And like this trade system, it's one of the reasons why so many tribes knew that the Europeans and the Spaniards were heading into North America.
Exactly.
The emergence of this trade network within the Chumash territory was facilitated by the existence of three distinct Chumash ecological groups, including the island, coastal, and mainland Chumash. Access to distinct resources for these different groups made inter-Chumash trade a large part of life. Villages along the mainland coast emerged as intermediaries between groups. The closer a village was to the ocean, the greater its reliance on maritime resources. Due to advanced canoe designs, coastal and island people could procure fish and aquatic mammals from farther out. Shellfish were a good source of nutrition, relatively easy to find and abundant. Many of the favored varieties grew in tidal zones. Shellfish grew in abundance during winter to early spring. Their proximity to shore made collection easier. Some of the consumed species include mussels, abalone, and a wide array of clams. Haliotis rufescens, red abalone, was harvested along the central California coast in the pre-contact era. The Chumash and other California Indians also used red abalone shells to make a variety of fish hooks, beads, ornaments, and other artifacts. Ocean animals, such as otters and seals, were thought to be the primary meal of coastal tribes people. But recent evidence shows the aforementioned trade networks exchanged oceanic animals for terrestrial foods from the interior. Any village could acquire fish, but the coastal and island communities specialized in catching not just smaller fish, but also the massive catches such as swordfish. This feat, difficult even for today's technology, was made possible by the tamal plankton. Its design allowed for the capture of deep water fish, and it facilitated trade routes between villages. Coastal Chumash relied less on terrestrial resources than they did on maritime, vice versa for interior Chumash. Regardless, they consumed similar land resources. Like many other tribes, deer were the most important land mammal the Chumash pursued. Deer were consumed in varying amounts across all regions, which cannot be said for other terrestrial animals. Interior Chumash placed greater value on the deer, to the extent of developing unique hunting practices for them. They dressed as deer and grazed alongside the animals until the hunters were in range to use their arrows. Even Chumash close to the ocean pursued deer, though in fewer numbers. The villages also relied on smaller animals, such as rabbits and birds, to supplement their meat needs. Plant foods composed the rest of the Chumash diet, especially acorns, which were the staple food despite the work needed to remove their inherent toxins. They could be ground into a paste that was easy to eat and store for years. Coast live oak provided the best acorns. Their mush would usually be served unseasoned with meat and fish. Estimates for the pre-contact populations of most native groups in California have varied substantially. The anthropologist Alfred L. Kroeber thought the 1770 population of the Chumash might have been about 10,000. Alan K. Brown concluded that the population was about 15,000. Sherburne F. Cook, at various times, estimated the Aboriginal Chumash as 8,000, 13,650, 20,400, or 18,500. The Chumash Chumash were hunter-gatherers and were adept at fishing at the time of Spanish colonization. They are one of the relatively few New World peoples who regularly navigated the ocean. Another was the Tongva, a neighboring tribe to the south. Some settlements built a plank boat, tomal, which facilitated the distribution of goods and could be used for whaling. The Chumash of the northern Channel Islands were at the center of an intense regional trade network.
But regional.
Yeah, exactly.
Trade network.
Regional. And that's pretty complex when you think about it.
Yeah. And these are people that are naked. So I'm saying you can't look at just because they're naked and go, well, they're primitive. Or say, oh, they're hunter-gatherers, so they're primitive. Like, no, they're doing regional trade.
Yeah, what about the regional trade network?
They're hunting whales for God, you know, what the hell?
Not just whales, they're hunting swordfish, like a deadly marine animal. Beads made from the Calianix shells were manufactured on the Channel Islands and used as a form of currency by the Chumash.
Oh, so they had currency too.
Yeah, imagine that. So not only do they have regional trade networks, you know, they can get pottery from Arizona. And presumably, I'd think information from further inland if they needed it or were interested. But they have a currency system.
Right. Went all the way up the Pacific coast.
But just think, they have a currency system. Yeah. Like, that's complex.
And they're naked.
Yeah. like the women are wearing 2 aprons. Like the men, like they'll wear a belt if they need to, like to attach tools. Right. But most of the time, they're like minimally clothed to naked with like body paint, regalia.
And
sometimes.
You get where I'm saying. So this thinking of that nakedness is somehow means something? No.
To a Eurocentrist point of view, it does, because we've been wearing textiles for so long.
Yeah, right.
But for these people, like minimal clothing, that's their standard.
Right.
So that's normal to them.
And
like,
that's what I'm saying. We need to see not from our perspective, our clouded lens, but from the clear thing of what's really going on.
Yeah. For example, from their perspective, seeing somebody wearing like thick textiles all the time, they would probably think that's weird.
They would.
Yeah. Shell beads were not just a form of currency. They also played a vital role in the Chumash social system. The bead exchanges helped people build social networks and accumulate wealth outside of food resources.
There's another thing that people think of generally as being something that is a, complex society.
Yeah. They're not just relying on food resources. They have this separate bead system that they could use to accumulate wealth.
Yeah.
That's even more complex than just a standard exchange. Yeah. This allowed the Chumash people to minimize the risk of food shortages in their tribe, and they were able to fall back on durable beads and their existing friends in other communities. Chumash chiefs and elite members were responsible for the redistribution of the shell beads, subsistence goods, and other items. These shell beads were traded to neighboring groups and have been found throughout Alta California. Some items that were traded by the Chumash from the island to the Chumash mainland tribes include shell beads, digging stick weights, stone rings, and steatite lolas, stone bowls, which originated mainly from Santa Catalina Island. The mainland tribes would, in return, export seeds, acorns, bows and arrows, fur, skin, roots, and baskets to the island. There was also trade from the mainland and inland areas with items such as fish and beads. The interior citizens would trade fish, game, seeds, fruit, and fox-skin shawls to the coast. Fernando Librado, Chumash elder, mentions that all the trade transactions took place on the mainland due to the location, since it was between the island and the interior. Over the course of late prehistory, millions of shell beads were manufactured and traded from Santa Cruz Island. It has been suggested that exclusive control over stone quarries used to manufacture the drills needed in bead production could have played a role in the development of social complexity in Chumash society. The bead-making industry involved 2 distinct craft specializations: the production of tools used to make beads and the actual manufacture of the beads themselves. Central to this industry was shirt, a hard, fine-grained sedimentary rock. The Chumash crafted small flakes of shirt to microblades, which were essential for their bead production. These microblades were then used to create drills, the tools necessary for making holes in shells, transforming them into beads. Thus, shirt microlithic tools played a crucial role in the bead-making process. The regional diversity present within the Chumash territory spawned an intricate trade system connecting the island, coastal, and mainland groups. The villages of Zaxis, Muwu emerged as the most important trade hubs for the Chumash people. Their positioning relative to coastal and mainland mainland trade routes and resources made these villages particularly powerful within the Chumash trade ecosystem. Foods historically consumed by the Chumash include several marine species, such as black abalone, the Pacific littleneck clam, red abalone, the bent-nosed clam, Ostrea lurida oysters, angular unicorn snails, and the butternut clam. Acorns, an important plant food, were ground up and cooked into a soup. They also made flour from the dried fruits of the laurel sumac. Highly prized seafood, such as swordfish, was caught through the use of plank canoes and was likely shared by chiefs during communal feasts. Feasts are a ritual activity of communal consumption of large quantities of food and drinks, along with dances, music, and singing. They played a large role in political and social relations for the Chumash people. The feasts would be prepared over many days, mostly by women, and would coincide with major events such as childbirth, marriages, and chiefs' birthdays. There are accounts of feasts being held for European expeditions passing through Chumash territories. There is evidence to suggest that a seafaring fishing economy in the Channel Islands has been around for at least 12,000 years. This can be seen through various types of fishing projectile points, as well as animal remains, such as seal, shellfish, and fish, all found at sites across the islands by archaeologists and researchers. Coastal people of California have been maintaining their food practices in various ways for a very long time. Herbs used in traditional Chumash medicine include thick-leaved yerba santa, used to keep airways open for proper breathing, laurel sumac, the root bark of which was used to make a herbal tea for treating dysentery, and black sage, the leaves and stems of which were made into a strong sun tea. This was rubbed on the painful area or used to soak one's feet. The plant contains diterpenoids such as aethiopinol and ursolic acid, which are known pain relievers. The Chumash formally practiced an initiation rite involving the use of sacred datura, momoi, in their language. When a boy was 8 years old, his mother would give him a preparation of it to drink. This was supposed to be a spiritual challenge to help him develop the spiritual well-being required to become a man. Not all of the boys survived poison. Remains of a developed Chumash culture, including rock art paintings apparently depicting the Chumash cosmology, such as Chumash Painted Cave State Historic Park, can still be seen.
And then this picture under here of all these things is the Chumash's cosmology and complexity, and it gives us an idea of just a simple idea of some of the stuff that they were, doing.
Yeah, and the Chumash painted cave, it's still incredibly well preserved, and even the pigments they used, red, blacks, and sometimes other pigments like blues, they're still really vivid inside that cave. It's incredible.
Right on. But I'm just saying, once again, also shows that they're not really primitive.
No. If any, the complexity, it's incredible.
Yeah, and then these numbers correlate to the pictures and explain sort of what they are. Number 1, number 2. Go ahead and read that.
Number 1, Chumash pictographs. A, sky, earth, and sea. The sky and sea are anthropomorphic, whereas the earth has lines and circles, perhaps indicating villages' paths. B, swordfish. Ali 1 in Chumash, pronounced
You don't have to
Gael.
read, that's fine.
I was going to try to pronounce it. Was fabled to drive whales onto the beach and provide food for people during the winter.
Right, so just people understand. My thing is not trying to make sure that, it would be great if me and Dylan both, can read the names of different cultures. I suck. Dylan's probably a little bit better than me, but to me, that in my videos, this is not the goal, is for us to give accurate pronunciations of words, but to get the general idea, like we're trying to address in this thing, that like this video particularly, that nakedness doesn't, or minimal clothing doesn't equal primitive, and to give you the understanding of the depth of why it's inaccurate to think of them as
and the primitive stereotype. You've already done a good job talking about that with Corey in your complex hunter-gatherer series.
Well, thank you. Yeah, people should go watch that too. I agree.
It's a 3-part series, and each one is like 2 to 3 hours long. It's very worth checking out because Corey and Damien they'll go over like everything. I think from Göbekli Tepe to the Pacific Northwest to like early experimentation with grain in like northeastern Africa. It's incredible the stuff that people were doing, and it really shatters the primitive stereotype, showing what people are truly capable of.
Right on. I agree.
It's incredible.
Thank you. That's what I was saying. My goal is general education for regular people, not per se that I'm great at pronouncing, other cultures' words. That's, I mean, I wish I was. That's not what I'm great at. And so I'm giving you what I'm good at, and especially this goes back to, in a sense, my anarchism, that I want people to see other, just like the America says in their founding document, all people are created equal. I'm trying to help you understand that on a more granular level, that people are really not primitive and more complex and more equal, even than you think, including what people think is primitive people.
C. Sun and moon. The sun is depicted as a whorl. The moon, or momoi, is depicted as a 10 or so pointed star. D. Night sky is an intricate drawing of concentric designs with 4 direction indicators. E. Beetle is a comical figure. Chumash legends describe a stink beetle that sticks its head in the ground and creates a bad smell all around it. Beetle is able to ignore everyone else and drive others away with the bad smell. F. Frog is able to live in the water and air worlds. These worlds were seen as identical mirror images of each other by the Chumash. G. Possible depiction of a uterus. Number 2. Chumash pictographs that tell stories. A. Sky Coyote and the sun are playing peon as described in Spirit, Mind, and Body in Chumash healing. B. Deer dance. Every fall, this dance may have been performed to thank God for deer. The dance is led by the Paha, ceremonial leader. The dancers hold the deer skins on sticks and move their arms as they dance. Some Chumash males had pierced noses, and many had pierced ears. The ear holes were large enough to hold containers for carrying tobacco. For special occasions, they painted their entire bodies. The paint served a practical purpose, since it acted as a sunscreen. The ceremonial costumes representing animals and birds might be made from an entire bear skin or from all the plumage taken from the giant California condor. The Chumash believed the universe was divided into 3 worlds.
Pause for 1 second. And that mirrors what the Nordics believed, and that mirrors what the Central Americans believed, and that mirrors what the people that were the Mississippi mound builders believed. So it's more spread around, in a sense, that thinking of 3 worlds.
Yeah, it's widespread. It's not just the Norse that most people think. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. It's like you were saying, there's a, like what we're trying to do, show people that like human beings are equal, that we have a lot more similarity than we do differences.
Right, including religious ones.
Yeah.
So that, like I said, that's why I feel like when you think of hunter-gatherer or not clothed as primitive, you're literally believing bigotry.
Yeah.
Propaganda, or misunderstanding, not a actual position of reality.
Okay, so there's the sky world, the world of the people, Earth, and the lower world, where evil beings lived. According to Chumash tradition, animals were Earth's first creatures. When death appeared on Earth, some animals rose into the sky to escape it and turned into heavenly bodies, such as the sun, moon, morning star, evening star, and sky coyote. The chief of the sky people was the eagle, who held up the sky with his wings. Eclipses
Pause for a second. Which would be kind of like the firmament, which is also in Egypt and also in the Bible and also in other cultures of the world.
It's another widespread motif.
That is.
Cultures have.
That is. The Sumerians which, like I told you, to me, I feel that the reason is not like people separately in situ all came up with the firmament. I think the idea spread. It morphs to the culture, but the concept really is not that.
No. And something I'll point out, since it mentions the chief of the sky people was an eagle.
Right.
The video we watched earlier, it gets into the relationship between tribes of the U.S. and bald eagles.
Right on. People should watch that. I mean, obviously, the stuff I only can do so much. I'm trying to do other things. In fact, I need to finish, which I haven't. I need to finish my thing of figuring out how many tribes had chiefs or some sort of a stratified big man, something along that line, elites. I'm doing that. I'm also trying to go back and figure out, I believe that totemism starts, like 40 to 50,000 years ago. And there's genetic evidence that people stopped having incest as much. The huge drop by 40,000 to me showing that a cultural thing had happened. 35,000 is the first female figurine in Europe. So you have these, and I would say that it's not illogical illogical to think who would say don't have sex with your children. Sounds more like something a female would lead than a male would champion if given the chance. So I really already was thinking the totemism probably was matrilineal, which would also coincide with why they're making female figurines emerging at a similar time. And so I wanted to go look with this thinking, what does the DNA show us? And I realized that the first people that come into the Europe have N, M, R, and U. But by 45 to 30,000, U becomes the only lineage. And then by 25, it's almost just U5, even though there's U up to U9. So, and that includes later the Mesolithic Western hunter-gatherers is U5. The Samis still have, from 10,000 down, U5. And so I'm talking about thousands of miles of Europe, like Eastern, Western, Southern, Northern. I'm almost all one thing, where this is interesting too. They have multiple males, but only one female, which would hint at probably a matrilineal clan for me.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, so I'm trying to, because now that I kind of realize that I'm trying to map that out too and figure out to express that to, and then we'll do a video on it. But so I'm just saying and then also I still have injuries from my truck accident. This last week, I could barely use my hands. They got arthritis is terrible, and I can't hardly pick anything up or do. So I took almost a week off because my hands. So I'm just saying. So I
knew you had gotten into an accident when you were still truck driving. I didn't know you were still having issues that severe.
Worse. No, they got
goodness.
For a while. It was bad when it first happened, and then for a while it kind of didn't happen, and then my foot got to where I just couldn't drive anymore. I couldn't walk, couldn't walk sometimes. Still kind of happens, but I bought whatever 14-hole boots now I wear constantly. That's actually been a lot better. I've had less problem. If I try to wear shoes, about every couple months I go down where I can't walk.
Oh,
and it's throbbing, hurts. So I've kind of been I wear boots on right now. I wear them even in the house, constantly because the support. Anyways, so but I still have problems with my back, and I have problems sometimes my joints in general, like my elbows or my wrists or my hands, especially my hands. And sometimes I literally can't use them. So I'm sometimes almost completely, or my wife has to help me go to the bathroom. I mean, I'm totally fucked. And I don't talk about it a lot because it's just my life. I try to focus on all the other stuff, that I am doing and I'm trying to do. But it definitely, because some people think that, I have it easy or something. I don't. And, but that doesn't stop me from being, who I am. So that's also why it's more relative to me, the disability stuff and where I post. To me, sometimes you can't see, and my stuff comes and goes. Sometimes I am okay. So people are well, I've seen you standing. Yeah, sometimes I can. I don't know if I can run, but sometimes I can. Sometimes I am in a wheelchair. I literally cannot walk. And sometimes my hands is fine. And sometimes I literally can't even make a fist. I can't close my hand, can't pick things up. I mean, so I'm just saying, because of that, going back to I was saying about the video, I try to watch and learn a lot. I try to, do writing, but I also have to struggle through my own limitations. Like you said, I think I've done good stuff, and people should definitely go and read my old blogs, because everything I feel I could do is from a place of education, not just frivolous.
No, because even know what you're going through, it sucks, to put it bluntly. Everything that you've been able to put together over these years since your accident, it just shows that you're really resilient, that you can focus your mind to put together these huge blog posts for people to go through and check out.
Thank you.
That's really noteworthy. Incredibly noteworthy.
Yeah, especially too, my thing wasn't, people always think I must have a degree in anthropology or something. No, my degree was in psychology, and I was going to be a drug and alcohol counselor for a Christian one. And then I ended up turning atheist, and so that kind of messed that up. But and then before I started to go into my master's, and physically I was trying to do truck driving and also do my master's, and I physically couldn't do it. And then when I was driving, I was going to try to drive and then go back to school, and then I couldn't drive anymore. And so I've had a lot of problems. And of course, all that stuff too really messes with me mentally. And I also have extreme, complex PTSD from my abusive childhood, so I have all this stuff that I try to deal with. And I also, though, like I've said to you before, my goal is, like you said, resilient. I want to show I have all this stuff, and it doesn't stop me from being a good person. It doesn't stop me from trying to live up to being a kind person, to being a thoughtful person. And I feel like, because what does I bring this up is some people will say a cop out. Well, I had a hard life in childhood, and that's why I'm mean. Yeah, I had a very terrible, and I was for a while mean, but I realized there's no value in being like that. Is not good for me. Other people do it. That's also not how. I don't like using my knowledge or my stuff, because you see I know a lot and learned a lot as some kind of weapon against people. I personally don't value that. I want to be a person who is welcoming to strangers, even ones that are jerks. Because some people say, well, they're a jerk. Yeah, and I don't act that way because I'm not that way. So and also you can see too that a lot of people really don't attack me, even though I say even the ones that attack me, it's like they're not good faith arguments. I mean,
No.
but it's generally not I'm a bad person and any kind of legitimate to say that, because I don't do that. And like I told you, I hope that people learn that as well, not just to have knowledge, because that's super important, but character. That is also a really important thing to be and to learn and to emulate for people to look up to. And like I said, it doesn't matter, I can have all kinds of struggles, still be a good person. Be persecuted, still be a good person. So it's a choice.
Perseverance and willpower.
Yeah.
It can, just going, I've had similar experiences growing up, not abuse, but with body issues, especially with my feet. I've talked to other people about it before. I won't get into it here, but I missed out on a lot growing up because of issues with my body. I've had surgeries to fix them. I've had issues with my back before. It really takes perseverance and willpower to get through days. Sometimes it can be really challenging. So hearing you talk about your struggles and your story and what's led you here, it's inspiring to me, because it's something I can really connect with that.
Right on.
On a really deep level, I can connect with that.
Well, I appreciate it. And like I said, to me, what I want to be known for is not just that I know a lot, but that I was a good person, and I made people inspire to also be good people. And like I post every Sunday, I say that I'm a socialist anarchist and that we rise by helping each other. And I also say that I welcome all good people. I'm not like some people that say, well, you have to be an atheist because I'm an atheist, or say you have to be an anarchist because I'm an anarchist, or a leftist because I'm a leftist, or be super knowledgeable because I am super knowledgeable. I don't say any of that. What I expect out of people is being good people, because that's what I try to show. Even with all my stuff, it's still a choice. I can be a good person.
Yeah, and even if you have, even if a person's disabled and they can't walk, it's not gonna. No, I don't think it's gonna do much to just wallow in pity, self-pity all the time. Take your energy. If your mind is fine and you can still do stuff, if your arms are fine and you can still do stuff, direct that energy into something productive for yourself. Or what you're doing, learning about the world and publishing what you've learned so other people can learn. That goes a long way over the years. Just one of these articles can really transform somebody's life. At least I think so.
Oh, I think so too. And that's why I said I feel like it really matters. I don't take this lightly. I don't approach it lightly, and I don't try to offer them lightly. And I know for some people my stuff is long, and but you know what? There's a huge benefit.
Oh yeah, there's a really huge benefit if you take the time to you don't even have to sit and read the whole article in one sitting. You can just lean back, grab a soda or a water or something, and listen to the podcasts. Those are info packed too, and sometimes they're pretty comical. Especially your older ones with Corey.
Yeah.
Sometimes the tangents he'd go on, or these little jokes he'd throw in. It's stuff that people can connect with on a really not just an emotional level, but an intellectual one too, because you're juggling back and forth between these like little jokes and like like ancient societies in China or something.
Right.
Yeah, so it's it's like for me, it's humbling seeing what people can put together despite their limitations. It's really humbling.
Thanks. I know, because some people that said before when I started doing stuff, they're like, "You're not an expert. You don't have a degree. You don't have the training. And you can't hardly spell, and you can't hardly pronounce the words." And none of that has stopped me from putting out good stuff. That even people that academic now are starting, to agree that I do have good ideas, that I do bring up things that make people think. That so I feel like that I told you though too. I really care as an anarchist to give power to the people. This kind of knowledge and expanding yourself and not feeling like you have to wait for some expert or wait for some. Be willing to go learn and go read and go check and expand yourself. We should desire our own education. That's also like I really don't like when like Hancock or other these pseudo archaeologists attack academia. It is good to learn things, and people that have spent time focusing and learning stuff, it is helpful. I am very pro education, so I mean,
so am I. I've been that way for like since I was a little kid, like since I was in elementary school and middle school.
You're wise.
I love learning stuff, whether or not it was at school or on my own, and a lot of the time it was on my own because of my issues that I had with my feet. I couldn't go to school. I couldn't walk.
Right. Well, I feel you on that. All right, let's go back to the video.
Okay, yeah. Eclipses occurred when Eagle covered the moon with his wings. If the sky people became upset, terrible storms rained down on the world of the people. And if the two serpents who held up the world of the people became relentless and moved, earthquakes and other disturbances would shake the earth. Dead people journeyed through the heavenly bodies before reaching the afterworld. A central feature of the Chumash religion was the consumption of a drug called toloak, which is obtained from a plant called Jimson weed. The drug causes those who take it to go into a trance-like state and see visions. Chumash religious leaders were priest astrologers who could read meanings in the positions of the heavenly bodies. Under the influence of the toloak, the priest astrologers painted pictographs in sacred caves. The exact meaning of these pictographs is not known, but they may have been attempts to communicate with the spirit world. Toloak was also consumed by sons of wealthy families as part of their training for a religious society called an antop. Hunter-gatherer / indigenous peoples' religiosity, beliefs, and practices. The smooth and irregularly shaped shallow sandstone cave contains numerous drawings apparently depicting the Chumash cosmology and other subjects created in mineral pigments and other media over a long period ranging from about 200 up to possibly 1,000 years or more. The Chumash are probably best known for the pictographs, which were brightly colored paintings of humans, animals, and abstract circles. They were thought to be part of religious rituals and astronomical events. Rock art may have been created by shamans during vision quests, most commonly in the form of pictographs, paintings on rock, but sometimes petroglyphs, engravings on rock as well. No one is absolutely certain about the meaning of the Chumash rock art, but scholars generally agree that it is connected with religion and astronomy. The rock art sites are always found near streams, springs, or some other source of permanent water. In his research of Southern California rock art, Grant recorded numerous sites from different areas that were all close to a water source.
Right, and like we talked about before, that's also kind of thing for the mound builders, that there's often a water source. In fact, even some of the, I know pyramids and stuff or mounds are over water sources, including even in Central America and whatever. There's some that are like over aquifers or underground water.
Chumash tradition.
Sorry, real quick. So in which if people watch some of the other videos we have, we explain how the whole universe was water, and that includes like how the earth can be on top of a turtle swimming or floating in water. And also, we're going to, in one of our later videos on the mythology, we're going to address my thought of the mythology world, or myth, researchers' opinions about water and all that, how I kind of agree with most of what they say, but I also disagree with some of their thinking, and I'm going to address that so people can learn at least. And I feel like in general, and this, like I told you too, when it comes to archaeology or anthropology, I'm like, 95% agree with what they say. It's just some of the stuff I kind of disagree on particular issues. Not like Graham, where like I make blanket statements. I don't agree with it. I think it's interesting too. Archaeologists and anthropologists sometimes have differing views. You already read that one about how many people were the Chumash, right? 3 different people had 3 different numbers, including one of the people had 4 different numbers for their own opinion.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to show that it's not like, this goes back to the Graham Hancock nonsense, that there's some kind of a archaeology or anthropology or history or even mythology cabal, and they're all like thinking alike. It is good to sometimes have a little bit different takes on things. That is not a bad thing. It shouldn't be like a hive mind, and I don't agree that it is. That also doesn't mean because I have a different opinion on something or a varied opinion, like I told you, that one guy, LA or something, whatever, Murcia, John Hoops sees a little more like Graham Hancock, and I see, there's problems with him, but a little, I think some of the things have points he makes have some validity. He takes it too far, but so I could agree, but it's still not like 100%. I follow exactly what John Hoop says, even though most of the stuff he says I agree with. You know what I'm saying? So I think that it, but also that's not a bad thing. Science is not like no theory can ever be challenged or questioned. Like Graham Hancock acts like. No, Graham, when you offer complete fucking nonsense, yes, that will always be challenged.
Yeah. That whole archaeological mafia, him and his followers always talk about, who apparently are saying this is the truth and nothing but the truth, and this is what you have to believe. You just have to go to a Wikipedia page, or just read an article, any article about an archaeological site, and you'll see that's not how it is. Or like you just mentioned earlier with the Chumash population estimates. One person gave 10,000 as a rough estimate. Then there was the other one who gave 4 different numbers. Right. What was it? 8,000 for the low ball and 18,500 for the upper.
20,000. Yeah.
Yeah. So
right. That's what I'm trying to say is that I know that he banks that people aren't going to do any of their own research, and I understand people in general that don't know things don't know enough to value when people have specific stuff. So they just hear, to them, I know, 2 different people saying things. One of them they think is the like the deep state kind of a thing, the academia, and somehow that's like evil, and anything that's not academia is more trusting, which is it's our world. It's like the MAGA. It's dumbasses like RFK Jr. saying, Tylenol causes autism or whatever nonsense, and they'll make a study that says that's not true. But can we trust the study? Yeah, I as you know, I don't respect. I'm a rationalist. Shit has to make sense. You have to come up. I absolutely do value what experts say, and also you should be willing to let them present the stuff without bias, like you supposedly believe Graham Hancock. That you let him present his. Just listen to him. You gotta listen to him, man. Well, then you should do that with the archaeologists. Just listen to him. Just listen to him, man.
Yeah.
You
think they would, but a lot of them won't.
They just immediately, like a conspiracy theorist, just immediately go, well, they have to be pushing a narrative. Oh yeah, because Graham's not selling books and trying to be a millionaire, right? Right.
No, yeah. Or the archaeologists are controlling a narrative. Isn't that what Graham's doing? Because he's selling books. He hasn't changed his view at all in the past 30 years.
No matter, he doesn't have evidence to support it.
No, I would call that controlling a narrative.
Oh fuck yes.
He needs you to believe a certain thing. That way he can sell his books.
And his archaeologists in the past 30 years absolutely have changed their minds.
Yeah. So who's controlling the narrative?
Well, that's my point. point. And you act like we're supposed to listen to him, but yet you won't take that critical thinking and open mind and listen to the academics. I just find that just vacuous and pseudo thinking. It's not real thinking, pseudo thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
The same thing I feel like when I try to tell the right wingers, like there's one person, right? So I posted about like what we're doing at the beginning about how America, doesn't support, freedom really, that they had slaves until, 1865. So any 4th of July ceremony before that had people celebrating freedom and equality and yet slavery at the same time. Talk about and they go, well, but Jefferson, when he did the first draft of the Declaration of Independence, he was going to chastise the king for the invention of the slave trade. And I go, yeah, Jefferson, the guy that in his lifetime had 600 slaves. He enslaved shit tons of people. And then they're like, well, it's like they don't like to hear the fucking truth. And they take it with as much openness as they offer their stuff, right? Well, we have to say his heart's in the right way. I just stopped talking. Heart's in the right way. Having 600 enslaved people, literally your heart is not in the right way. What you need to say is like Trump, your words are not matching your actions. So then your heart, I would say, probably is the actions, not the lying words that you say to me, right? But they don't, that's why I don't want to, I don't have enough time in my life to watch the videos I want to watch or read the stuff I want to read. I certainly do not have, or will I not, spend time arguing with people that choose to be bigoted. I just do not have time for that. I won't do it. I won't waste my life on that nonsense.
No, that's just what I was thinking. Yeah, because it's like you're trying to apply logic to somebody who isn't using logic, and it's like oil and water. It's not going to mix, no matter how much you try.
They want to have the bigotry, they just start with, well, John Hoops is not a good person. Well, how do you know that? Well, Graham Hancock, the not good person, said that. Well, I'm sorry, Graham Hancock is a full of shit. I would even use his opinion for fuck all.
And then even after you show them like how Graham's wrong or how any of these other people are wrong or flawed thinking or whatever it may be, they'll still say that John Hoops is a bad person.
And they'll say, I'm a bad person who's somehow blinded by John Hoops. I'm like, oh my God. So I'm saying, why argue with them? They say, what a waste of time. They're indoctrinated like a cult. They don't literally, I don't mind explaining to a person they're in a cult, explaining why they're wrong. And then after that point, I just walk on. All right, cool. You just keep being dumb fuck, whatever. You want to keep propaganda instead of reality, go for it. Same thing like I'm saying about America or about understanding, people. I try to give you the understanding that's correct and to see it in a less biased way. Look, I'm not saying I have zero bias. One person Ford said to me, well, you just think you have no biases. That's bullshit. I realize I do, and I try to fight them.
Yeah, like everybody has a bias in one way or another.
It's like
what's good is being aware of the biases that you have and working to straighten those out. That way you can approximate truth or something.
And that's why you should care about listening and learning and then evaluating stuff, not start with bigotry. And I never started with bigotry with Graham Hancock. So people got that wrong too if they think that. Let's just assume that I had never heard of him, and John Hoops was the first person to explain stuff. John Hoops explains why he's wrong, and then it makes logical sense. Well, yeah, and like I said, I love that one statement from him. He's got no evidence. That's a good reason not to trust him. He literally admits he doesn't have any evidence. Well, why would I listen to someone who doesn't have evidence and put stuff together that's not evidence? Like, no, I don't have time for that. Any more than I have time for people telling me why I need to fear their hell. Yeah, which is so stupid because the person trying to make me fear their particular hell. Also, there's religions all over the earth with all kinds of hells, right? Like the Chumash, different religion. You don't fear their religion hell, do you? Well, no, right. And I don't feel you fear yours.
Chumash traditional narratives and oral history say that religious specialists, known as Al-Chuklash, created the rock art. Non-Chumash people call these practitioners medicine men or shamans. According to David Whitley, shamanism is a form of worship based on direct personal interaction between a shaman or medicine man and the supernatural or sacred realm and its spirits. In Chumash territory, the sites for the vision quests were usually located near the shaman's village. The Chumash considered caves, rocks, and water sources sources quite powerful, and the shamans saw them as a portal to the sacred realm where they could enter the supernatural. The way a shaman interacted with the supernatural was by entering a hallucinogenic trance or altered state of consciousness. In this altered state, brought on either by surprisingly potent native tobacco or Jimson weed, shamans received visions and supernatural power from spirit helpers, often in the forms of dangerous and powerful animals like rattlesnakes and grizzly bears.
So let's pause for a second and go back to the beginning of that. So it says the non-Chumash, right? Because the Chumash actually don't exactly call it medicine men or shaman. Shamans is a word that relates to Asia, so in Siberia. So, but we understand that what they're talking about, like when you call someone a priest, or you call something a temple, or you call something sacred, or whatever. These are European like spirits. They may not call it a spirit or say it's the supernatural. You know what I'm saying? But when they explain it, we understand, oh, you mean the supernatural. Oh, you mean a God. They may not use the word God, but when we hear it, we go, oh, God. So just to explain that. And I also did research because I wanted to know, because some people say, oh, well, some people were shamans in the Americas, but it wasn't everybody. Well, I researched every native language group in the Americas, both North America, South America, and every single language group has some sort of, in a sense, we can call them, to make it simpler understanding, a religious practitioner that sounds like or is called or could be justifiably called either a shaman or a medicine person, because saying it men when women could also do that is once again adding a sexist element that's not really accurate to the people that were doing this behavior. And by the way, shamans, especially like in Asia and in early Europe, seem to be or could be known as female almost exclusively. And it's later that probably males came in, or depending on cultures, females were the predominant and not males. So saying medicine men, it could be medicine women, because that word, we're making it up. In other words, the thought of medicine, like herbs or whatever, or religious behavior to receive a type of behavior, outcome, could be seen as medicine. And having a medicine bag is basically a bag with religious items in it that you believe does something, protection or whatever. Or so, but I'm just saying. So these words, we need to understand them in a more developed, less bigoted term, in a sense. Like I told you, to me, animism, like some people say, well, these are animistic religions. Well, animism itself is the belief in spirits. So in a sense, that itself is not a religion. But yes, there can be an animistic religion, because all religions, every single one, Christianity included, has animistic thinking. The difference is they don't say, oh, that mountain is a certain being or spirit, but they will say that is the mountain of God, like the Sinai or whatever, or God lands on that mountain. So a spirit is associated, and they call it the Holy Land. Why? Is that plot of dirt not sacred to you? Why is it sacred? Is it not, in a sense, some spirit relates to that in a different way? God bless this land. So a spirit is associated with the land. That is an animistic concept. You see what I'm saying? For me, how I interact with these terms. We're going to do a video of one of these times on all the native languages and how they relate to shamans and whatever. But I'm just trying to help people understand who may not have watched my other videos, because I talk about kind of this board, and we'll talk about it again, because I want you to get this not limited, bigoted, Eurocentric sort of, way that these are used. Because often, if it's a white person, that's a priest, but they won't always call a native person a priest. They'll call him a medicine person or a shaman as a lower status. Just like we know paramount chieftains could just be called kings, like King Calusa down in Florida, we were talking about in one of our other videos. And yet the British distinctly did not want to say anyone was a king, no matter if it had every feature of a king, because they only wanted one king to be the king of England. So I'm just saying that I don't agree with some people that say stop using these words, they don't have any good meaning. No, I think that we need to start using them in a non-bigoted way, to me. But that's, of course, my own perspective, and people have the right to feel different than I do. But that's how I see it. I interact interact with these terms, because the reason that it's most important to me, like say, if I were to be like some people on the left, that are anarchists and reject all these terms, then it would be hard to transmit ideas to other people that are ignorant and don't want to read like me. I've read like 4 major books on shamanism, and I've read all kinds of articles and I've read about the concept from where it originated to all over the earth, both in Australia and Africa and Americas and Siberia and Europe and Middle East and everywhere in between. You know what I'm saying? So I try, like I told you about not caring so much about pronunciation. I'm trying to give you the more global perspective so that you're informed without having to read all the stuff or watch videos, as I've watched tons of videos too on shamans doing practices and stuff. Everybody doesn't have to do that or shouldn't have to. I'm trying to give you, the helpful cliff notes, which if you watch more of my videos. That's what I'm saying. But I do want to address that often how they're used by non-indigenous people is limited and bigoted. That is also true. So I can understand where they say, that these terms can often be a problem. Yeah, because they like, in other words, they'll say animistic religion, but they'll never apply that to Christianity or Islam when they both have it. Do you not have spirits? Is there not jinns? What's a jinn exactly? Or not a spirit? It's an actual being? Oh, it is a spirit. Oh, it's a different kind though. Oh, we have souls. Are souls not spirits? You believe in ghosts or afterlives? I mean, a reincarnation of what exactly? A spirit? So, like I told you, I tried to listen to all of it and then give an easier understanding, but in a critical thinking way still, that okay, just like I used the word, someone complained before I used the word pagan, that's not a real thing. Nobody was at a certain time in the past was like, usually you were said you're a pagan, it just meant non-Christian, and sort of. But I understand what they're kind of meaning, and so like I use words to try to help people grasp concept. So because I do see that there is a lot of stuff that is similar, so it's not right to think that everyone's in situ just inventing everything new every time. Like, no. There's a lot of stuff that's similar, which we've already done videos. And if you watch the whole series on mythology, I explain how a lot of it, and we're going to do other stuff too, that addresses this. Because that's what I try to show is actually, also, like I told you, it's important because I feel like it helps remove some of the bigotry too. When you realize, oh yeah, mine's not special. These other people have almost similar or a very developed thing that is similar. So
spirit helpers almost never took the form of an animal that was an important source of food, because it was taboo for a shaman to eat meat from the species of his helper. The discovery
and like I've said before, to me, whenever you say taboo in a specific thing and it's connected to something like that, the reason you can't eat it is not really shamanism, it's totemism. So
yeah, there's like a ranking of like what you can eat, what you can't eat, different social norms and things like that.
Right, social norms. Whenever usually it's social norms, it's more totemism related and clan related. And sometimes the reason you can't eat it and why it's a special animal is because it's relating to the clan. Sometimes the genealogy of the clan. They'll have like a belief that, our clan comes from that animal, or that animal relates it or is a metaphor for our clan. Which we're going to do a thing about clans too and explain that more, but go ahead.
The discovery of chewed quids, plant material chewed to extract the jug, is in the ceiling of a site named Pinwheel Cave, were identified as Datura Wrighty. This match was the first confirmation of the consumption of a hallucinogen at any Chumash site, and possibly any in the world. Chumash rock art depicts images like humans, animals, celestial bodies, and other, at times ambiguous, shapes and patterns. These depictions vary considerably and appear to be in no particular order or arrangement. The colors of the paintings vary as well, from red or black monochromes, different shades of a single color, to elaborate polychromes, many various colors. The Chumash made paint paint from a mixture of mineralized soil, stone mortar, and some kind of liquid binder, like blood or oil from animals or mashed seeds. The addition of an oil binder helped to make the paint permanent and waterproof. Orange and red paint contained hematite or iron oxide, while yellow came from limonite, blue and green from copper or serpentine, white from kaolin clays or gypsum, and black from manganese or charcoal. Paint was applied with a person's finger or a brush. Grant organized the types of images depicted in the paintings into two categories: representational and abstract. Representational images include squares, circles, and triangles, zigzags, crisscrosses, parallel lines, and pinwheels. Grant noted that in settled villages, abstract paintings were prominent, while the areas occupied by bands and hunting people reveal representational images. In the early 20th century, non-natives began studying California rock art, including a number of archaeologists, such as Julian Stewart and Alfred Kroeber. Because of some commonly occurring symbols in paintings, it was believed that at least portions of the rock art depicted themes of fertility, water, and rain. At Painted Cave, a circle enclosing 5 spokes, surrounded by other circles, some spoke, some rayed, is thought to represent the solar eclipse of November 24th, 1677. Pinwheel shapes, dots, and concentric circles are believed to be celestial bodies. Figures combining human and animal features represent states of transformation that the Chumash experienced. Certain animals, such as rattlesnakes and frogs, are believed to represent spirit helpers. There are several sites with archaeoastronomy interpretations of glyphs. The site at Painted Rock, San Luis Obispo County, California, has an arbor glyph that looks like a lizard with what seems to be Polaris, the North Star, in the constellation Ursa Major. Condor Cave, in the San Rafael Mountains near Sisquoc River, has a cave entrance that lines up with the sun at dawn on the winter solstice. Inside the cave are motifs that are described as a possible solar symbol. Concerning the age
Pause
of
for a
the
second.
painting,
What I think it's interesting is this is not an agricultural culture. And yet they're doing sun symbols, which are often heavily related to agricultural groups.
yeah, and it's in the moon symbols that you expect more with hunter-gatherer cultures.
Correct. That is
Yeah.
correct. Just showing how that we need to understand that things can be more complex than our understanding. Like I said, cultures are complex. It's our understanding that is often limited.
Concerning the age of the paintings, Grant says a radiocarbon test on pigment from a Santa Barbara area pictograph site showed that the sample was not over 2,000 years old. The cave paintings of Southern California represent a particular art or local style or cult. An arbor glyph on an oak tree in the Santa Lucia Range in San Luis Obispo County was discovered to be Chumash art. The tree, locally known as the scorpion tree, was originally believed to have been the work of cowboys. However, archaeologists believe it to be the only known Native American arbor glyph in the western United States. The work on the tree is theorized to be correlated to the movement of celestial bodies. If true, it would demonstrate that Chumash art was likely used as astronomical calendars.
Which also sounds advanced.
Yeah, it does. They had at least one god whom they referred to as Su or Achu. They also had people known as shamans who represented the spirit world to their people and could perform important rituals and ceremonies. The shaman was often associated with a particular animal, such as a rattlesnake or a grizzly bear. People would call on the shaman to cure illnesses or bring good fortune, or to try to bring misfortune to their enemies. Chumash families were often grouped together into clans, organized by matrilineal clans, and held a largely matriarchal society.
And see, did I not say that I realized that clans likely started in matrilineal?
Yeah.
Which is interesting because before, a lot of people thought that hunter-gatherers in the Paleolithic were equalitarian and thus whatever, to be both parents, not a particular one like matrilineal or patrilineal, which I think maybe is wrong. It needs to be rethought, especially comparing the DNA. Like I said, that's why I want to do a blog on that too. But
a clan
to me, just to go back, I think you already know this, but so people know, clans to me is not shamanism, it's totemism. It's about your behavior, not in the spirit world, but like on this world.
A clan is a group of families with common ancestors, matrilineal Chumash family history. Oftentimes, these clans would be identified with an animal, such as the eagle or coyote. Villages would be made up of people of different clans, and it was common to marry someone from outside your clan.
Right. So pause for a second. Identifying an animal to a thing is a totem animal, so totemism, like I was saying. And then outside your clan is a moiety system, which I've already talked about before with you. And eventually we're going to do, like I said, a thing on clans and moieties and all that. And also what's interesting is that's not just America, is not just California. That's also in Africa and also in Asia and also in Europe and Siberia and Australia. Yeah. So, yeah. And then to think that all this happened, these similar systems that are all these complex and all that, especially when so many of the clans are matrilineal, that to me really seems culture motivated, not accidental emergence everywhere on the earth separately.
Yeah, and then when you combine that with motifs, like all these religious motifs that keep popping up all over the place.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it all seems to be telling a similar story, which I told you before, my opinion. Religion's a cultural product and moved in cultural migrations.
Yep.
Well, totemism or clan beliefs and chieftains and all this, and totemistic animals or shamanism, all this are religious ideas that were cultural, and they moved and spread in cultural migrations.
When two people got married, usually the husband moved to his wife's village and lived among her relatives. AI overview. Chumash taboos were deeply rooted in spiritual, social, and physical purity, centering on restrictions during life transitions and the respect for sacred spaces. Key taboos included strict dietary and behavior restrictions during menstruation and puberty, sacred silence or reverence at specific sites, and careful, expert-only handling of powerful substances like a datura. Datura, toloak, was used for ceremonies to connect with guardian spirits, but casual or improper use was highly taboo and dangerous.
And pause for a second. So guardian spirits, like people's guardian angel that they feel is so specific to their own religion. Yeah,
like the tutelar deities.
Tutelar deities.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, because like the God of Israel. Yeah, the tutelar deity for Israel. Yeah.
Antaps, members of a specialized elite religious society, maintained strict rituals, and tampering with or disrespecting these practices was taboo. While not a taboo in the Western sense, the cultural law of moderation meant it was forbidden to overharvest, requiring people to take only what was necessary. Each village had a playground, a smooth level area big enough to play outdoor games such as shinny, kickball, and the hoop and pole game.
So once again, more culture that wasn't primitive.
No, like they're not just hunting and gathering all the time, or even with an agriculturalist society. They're not just
this
farming.
This is a hunter-gatherer society. So
and
that's what I'm trying to say.
Chumash.
They're a naked hunter-gatherer society with shit tons of complexity.
Yeah, they're capable of building plank canoes. They're capable of deep water fishing. They're capable of going after whales and swordfish. But they also have enough free time to play games.
Yeah,
and on top of all that, they have regional trade networks with a currency based on shells.
And they're also doing astrology and caring about the stars and movements. And I'm just saying that it's us that needs to be thinking different.
Yeah, exactly. Another area in the village was a ceremonial dance ground surrounded by a high fence of tool mats to serve as a windbreak. Inside was the ciliate, or sacred enclosure, a semicircular area enclosed for privacy, where priests and shamans conducted religious rituals. Chumash worldview is centered on the belief that considers all things to be, in varying measure, alive, intelligent, dangerous, and sacred.
Right, so them all being alive and intelligent is animism.
According to Thomas Blackburn in December's Child, a book of Chumash oral narratives published in 1980, the Chumash do not have a creation story like Tongva, Aksha Chenmen, Quechna Juncham, and other Takic-speaking peoples. Rather, as summarized by Susan Suntree, they assume that the universe, with its 3, or in some versions 5, layers, has always been here.
Pause for a second. And so some versions in as we read before in another video on on the beliefs of the ancient Near East, that some of them have 3 levels also, or some are 5 or 7. So this also shows that even in the thing, it's not simplistic. They have sometimes more versions.
Human beings occupy the middle region, which rests upon 2 giant snakes. Chronological time is unimportant, though the past is divided into 2 sections. The universal flood that caused the first people to become the natural world, and thereafter the creation of human beings, the arrival of the Europeans, and the devastating consequences that followed.
But isn't it interesting too, the universal flood?
Yeah, out of all things that they want to hold on to for time, that's one of them.
Right. Which I don't agree with, as we already know, the Graham Hancock, that has anything to do with the real flood. No. That is mythology, Graham Hancock. You need to learn about mythology.
Yeah.
And when they mean by universal, it's a great flood. Just like we learned last time when we were talking about the Egyptians, they have the cow that was, name meant the great flood. And that cow related to the cosmic ocean, so cosmic sky or whatever. So it's not a regular flood, Graham Hancock or anyone else.
No. The middle region, sometimes referred to as Antap, where humans and spirits of this world live, and where shamans could travel in vision quests, is interconnected with the lower world. Through the springs and marsh areas, and is connected to the upper world through the mountains. In the lower world live snakes, frogs, salamanders. The world trembles or has earthquakes when the snakes which support the world. Water creatures are also in contact with the powers of the lower world and were often depicted in rock art, perhaps to bring more water to the Chumash or to appease underworld spirits at times of hunger or disease. Intiesha is the home of the first people. Alapai is the upper world in Chumash cosmology, where the sky people lived, who play an important role in the health of the people. Principal figures of the sky world include the sun, the moon, lizard, sky coyote, and the eagle. The sun is the source of life and is also a source of disease and death. The sky coyote, also known as the great coyote of the sky, or Shinilman, is considered to be a protector and, according to Enseño Chumash lore, looks out for the welfare of all in the world below him. During the creation of mankind, the sky coyote was present among the other important cosmological figures. According to John M. Anderson in his work Chumash Demonology, the eagle, also known as Slow, represents the ruler of Polaris. The eagle also is the force that maintains momentum and order among the other stars so that they do not fall down on and destroy Earth. The Chumash cosmology is also centered around astronomy. Rock art and arborglyphs that have been found within Chumash sites are thought to have depicted Polaris, the North Star, and Ursa Major, the Big Dipper. Specialists Rex St. Ong, John R. Johnson, and Joseph R.
The Big Dipper often, especially in Siberia, relates to the bear, and the bear relates to, in a sense, types of hunting cults, which we're going to do a thing on the bear and hunting cults for a video also.
And Joseph R. Talaugan argue in their article Archaeoastronomical Implications of a Northern Chumash Arborglyph that these 2 astrological entities were paramount to the Chumash belief system, as well as their perception of time. It is believed that the Chumash used these constellations to determine what time of year it was, depending on the position of Ursa Major around Polaris. Like other Native American universes, the Chumash mythical universe is ordered, but still very uncertain. Events occur at the whim of supernatural beings capable of kindness and malevolence. Supernatural beings can be both rational and irrational at times, as humans may be. Chumash narratives vary in plot, but the hero's journey and trickster's story appear frequently in Chumash oral culture. The motives inspiring the protagonist, however, appear dubious by Western standards, whereas Western fictional heroes are called to action and make decisions based on a clear set of choices. Chumash protagonists act based on an obtuse imperative or must. Magic and death also appear commonly as literary devices. Conflict often arises between beings with innate magical powers and those who acquired their powers through magical objects or helpers. Death, whereas it occurred in wherever it occurred in native stories, was always reversible and was usually undone with the aid of the aforementioned magical powers or special medicines bearing similar supernatural powers. Another commonly used literary device was inversion, where the opposite of what's to be expected occurs. Example, supernatural beings consume only toxic materials, or events occurring at day versus night in the human world are chronologically switched in the underworld. Time is not a strongly defined topic in Chumash folklore. Very little detail is placed on the creation of the universe, and there's little chronological order to narratives, suggesting that Chumash culture valued the idea of progress over time in a different way than the West. The universe was believed to have changed only very slightly in its history. One of the few transformative events was the flood. The flood was believed to have transformed the so-called first people into present-day plants and animals. Modern humans were created by supernatural powers, and death was introduced to deal with overpopulation. The flood separated Chumash mythology into an unspecified, indeterminate past in the world we see today. Again, similar to Western folklore, Chumash narratives often began and ended with idiomatic phrases. When Coyote was human, or Momoy was a rich widow, analogous to Once Upon a Time in Western culture, were introductions to stories about the two most commonly seen characters in Chumash narratives, as the West had, and they lived happily ever after. So the Chumash had an idiomatic expression roughly translating to, I am finished, it is the end. Most storytelling occurred at night, and some
Pause for a
stories...
second. And I've told you before, I believe that the pre-creation and stories around the world of hunter-gatherer cultures relate to night. In fact, there was a thing where they got all these different tribes. I think it was like 200 and something tribes, and most of them say that the more supernatural stories are at night, not the daytime. Which is why I told you too. I think most of the pre-creation or creation stories relate to darkness being the substance, and then water, and then land, and then people, in the sense where it starts in darkness or nighttime.
And some stories were told only in winter. The Chumash highly valued storytellers, and certain narratives were made privy only to subjects of certain social status. Chumash storytellers would integrate stories from elsewhere into their own beliefs. But despite this, Chumash narratives are significantly distinct from those of neighboring cultures.
All right, so we're going to stop there for this video. There's, by the way, for people, there's a lot more stuff to read and everything. I mean, a lot more. We're not going to...
There's a section further down on the... I think there's a section further down on the Calusa.
Yeah, there isn't. We're not going to read on the Calusa. But here's a picture that shows chieftains and hierarchies, and it shows there's not just one kind. There's a simple chieftain, and then there's a more complex chieftain, and there's a paramount chieftain, and then it shows the paramount and Cahokia chieftain, how it was the levels, one mound center, second mound center, third mound center, and then they broke down into smaller little things, and then those broke down to even smaller, just showing the complexity. And then a supreme chief also relates to king and nobility in the hierarchical structure, and how clans are involved in the later, sort of European, because in, say, Scotland and England, they had clans and the kings, and it's a similar system. Just so people, we're going to do a video on that eventually. I go more in depth on clans and things. But like I said, I think that we did a good job. My goal was to show that people that are naked, like the Chumash, all the way at the beginning, right? So our opinion that they're naked, they're in loincloths, they're primitive. You just literally have to let that go. That is an absolute fucking nonsense. And that the Chumash are very involved and complex. Naked was just a clothing strategy.
Yeah, and even though they're mostly naked, they still have clothes.
Yeah.
Women would wear those cloths, a set of two.
Yeah.
Men would sometimes wear belts. Sometimes they would wear like skins or furs when it was cold.
Yeah.
But a lot of their emphasis, like for Western culture, a lot of our emphasis is on clothing and looking stylish.
That's correct.
We do tattoos also.
Yeah.
But for the Chumash, and for surprisingly a lot of other like tropical and humid environment cultures, even though they have minimal emphasis on textiles, a lot of their style comes from body paint and adornment, like feathers, beads.
And like you said, tattoos. I agree.
Yeah, tattoos also. That's another major one.
Well, we're going to do a video too, because I have a thing where I figured out, not every place, but some of the places and how they connect and have similar chin tattoos that show that it's more connected than separate, like everything else. It's just all more connected than people realize, I feel, because it, like everything else, passed along culturally and wasn't just that every single culture came up with tattooing. Nah, I don't think so. Like everything else, it's, a cultural product that moved in cultural migration.
Especially when you get into something specific like that, like the chin tattoos, like in the thin lines. That seems really specific to me, and that so many Pacific groups would be doing that same thing.
Right. Well, here's one that shows Japan and South America doing a mouth tattoo, which is also kind of a unique thing. Right? It's not like when you think of tattoos, you generally don't think of around the mouth, but yet there are groups that are not culturally, connected that seem to be doing similar behavior. But sometimes these groups have somewhat similar DNA, or DNA's moved into areas that end up sort of, pushing these cultural ideas. Because like I don't believe, like Graham Hancock, that one culture, did it all. Fuck no. And one, language didn't do it all, and one DNA didn't do it all. It's way more diverse than that. But at the same time, I do believe things are moving in cultural migrations, and I think that there's a lot of evidence from multiple sources, which that's what I try to show, is evidence, multiple layered amounts of evidence that all kind of seem to point to all doing the same thing. They're just different ways of it happen, or different variations. But there's a lot of stuff all this stuff is cultural, and it's all moving, whether it's tattoos, or if it's, religion, or if it's cultural behaviors, or totemism and social behaviors. This stuff is way more connected, than people realize. And I think that it's important, because that is a better explanation than the belief that, Atlantis is real. Which is nonsense, or that the magic white people went around and taught everybody. I mean, that's absolutely, there isn't any evidence of that. No, but if I had done research and that was even reasonable, then I would agree. I don't have any bias to be one way or the other than I would really like it to be the truth, or something damn close to that, or something that at least has evidence to help support that thinking could be possible. I don't like the people that come up with thinking that literally doesn't match anything, doesn't sound possible. That's not the way to figure anything out. But I know that, people like what's easy and simple, and they're like, well, it looks like it's similar to me, so it has to be totally connected, the same people. You're like, no. No. But, I don't agree also with some people, especially some academics that feel that nothing's connected and no one traded and everyone was isolated. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't seem rational either.
No, that doesn't. That wouldn't. Yeah, no.
Okay, I'm not going to agree with.
I mean, yes, some groups were more isolated than others, but to claim, like some academics used to genuinely think that, like, most hunter-gatherers were completely isolated from one another.
I agree.
That, like, all these similarities that people would see even on the same continent had to be independent innovation. Even though you showed them, like, hey, here's like abundant evidence of like regional trade or what have you.
True. Yeah,
it's good that that archaeology, which is a science, despite what a lot of the pseudo crowd will claim, isn't like controlling a fixed narrative. It's progressing. A lot of academics used to think hunter-gatherers were isolated. Now a lot of them don't think so. They really depended on being interconnected with each other.
Oh, totally. Yeah, and what's gonna make them change is not calling them names and saying that you're closed-minded, but here's the thing, Graham Hancock, evidence. Yeah, they're real motivated by that, and not by just, well, I think it's so, it has to be so. No, they're not going to buy into that nonsense. They're going to want evidence, like which anyone should really want. I mean, it shouldn't be limited to academics demand this. It should be literally, I don't know, everybody. You know,
that's the main thing,
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's
it shouldn't even be an issue.
They just want evidence,
right?
Like if you can like put in the work and cite your sources and like write a good article that makes sense and presents your evidence clearly, like that's all they want.
Here's my thing. I agree. See, here's my thing for tattoos, and look at all this chin art.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. All the chin tattoos.
You're like, how it's all the way down New Zealand, all the way to Alaska and Siberia and China and over near India. Wait a minute. Yeah.
And notice like a lot of them, it's like multiple lines and they're flaring outwards.
Right.
Like, that's interesting to me.
They're often 3 lines.
Yeah, that's another one.
Which is like a distinct feature, right? Some of them are more than that, but there's a whole bunch that are 3 lines. But yes, or 2. You see, like there's like the, but But my point is the fact that so many of them are doing it under the mouth and it's all over the place. To me, literally, it's only women too. It's not like this is done to men. These are only what happens to women.
Yeah, and the fact it's not like super complicated. It's really simple. It's just lines.
Yeah. So to me,
like
I find it right. I find it that we're going to do the video on this. But seriously, it says at the bottom, face tattoos, especially items on the chin, generally women, are similarly seen on both sides of the Pacific, showing loosely related culture ideas they share. And so that's what and we're going to eventually do explain all this and whatever, but not obviously not today. But I'm just saying, so that's also how I try to figure it out. I go look at the evidence, which is like the opposite of the Graham Hancock theory, which I'm going to throw on the screen again just for the fun of it. What's Graham Hancock say?
You know what archaeologists have studied? Yes, we can say there is no evidence of an advanced civilization.
Right.
Yeah.
And I can say the opposite. In what archaeologists have studied, I can say, yes, there is evidence of my ideas that the cultural stuff moved in cultural migrations.
Yeah, because you have to keep in mind, like with his worldview, with what he's claiming, it's almost like after this like global catastrophe wiped out like this 18th century civilization he's been theorizing. It's almost like nobody moved after that. Like everybody stayed put and like maintained these traditions. Like even that, you just have to like do a little bit of reading and you'll find out that's not true. Like people have moved. Like people have moved around recently. Like people move with climate, with wars. Why wouldn't that happen in the past?
It did happen. Exactly. Hell yes, it happened all over the place. Yeah.
Gosh.
Well, I really appreciate everybody joining us for this, and I think it's an interesting topic that I feel like wasn't being addressed enough. Nakedness or half nakedness and its relation to advanced culture, not just people's bigoted views of being primitive. And that's also why we took a long time to explain a lot of the factors of the Chumash, which the Cluses also people should read. And there's more stuff for the Chumash too. But these are very complex societies. To think of that just nakedness or half nakedness, minimally clothed, loincloths means primitive. It's just you're being a big.
Oh yeah, I mean just the Chumash for me alone, knowing that they have regional trade, deep water fishing, and a currency system that they could store wealth in. Like think of the time that took to develop and the trust that it takes to maintain a system like that.
Absolutely,
like that's really complex. That's not primitive at all.
No, and they have multiple games they play.
That too,
and astronomical and different herbs and the whole system. There's nothing about it is simple or primitive.
No, not at all.
So
just because they're hunter-gatherers doesn't mean they're simple, doesn't mean they're primitive.
No.
You just take a look at the evidence and you'll see that they were a very complex people.
Yes. And that's more common than people actually being primitive as people think of as primitive.
Yeah.
Well, I had fun and I appreciate always is doing. Next time we'll do a show on mythology. So we're going to do the last of the series I wanted to do. So we're going to do reincarnation and rebirth, that kind of stuff. So, and it's not just limited to how, the Hindus or people from, that area, Vedic religions. It's actually almost 90% of the Americas and Siberia. So, and other cultures too have it. Like even in Egypt has a kind of a version of it, sort of. But yeah, I look forward to that too.
Yeah, so do I. I look forward to it too. Yeah.
So go ahead and tell people where they can find you and all that good stuff, and then we'll get out of here.
Okay, you can find me on X, Reddit, Blue Sky, and you can email me professionally at CopperViolette@gmail.com. The other socials are CopperViolette, academia.edu. I go by Dylan Violette on there, and you can reach me at Facebook also at Dylan Violette. Recently, I made a Blue Sky account, and I'm not really posting much there. I mainly made it to see what the space was like. I'll start posting there eventually, but you can find me there at CopperViolette.
Right on. And I'll go ahead and put the blog, of chatting with you on Prehistory, the video in that blog, and then that blog with your information, where to find you and information about you and stuff. I'll put it in this thing. So the next thing that I want to do that's not a mythology one, because we're going to do one mythology and then one archaeology. I want to do the one about where you and I live and the native groups in that area, because I think it'll go good with all this we've been talking about.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
So that'll be the native that'll be after the reincarnation is the next one. But after the reincarnation, we'll do the native groups of Maine and the native groups of Texas. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, so am I.
Right on. All right, everyone. Take care.
Okay, see you next time.
Hello, and welcome to my channel. I am Damien Marie AtHope. In the simplest terms, I am an atheist-humanist philosopher and prehistorical writer-researcher at DamienMarieAtHope.com. I am specifically an axiological atheist. An axiological atheism can be thought to involve ethical and value theory reasoned and moral argument driven apatheism, ignosticism, atheism, anti-theism, anti-religionism, secularism, and humanism. Axiological atheist can be understood as a value theory or a value science atheist. As an axiological atheism's ethically reasoned and constructive pro-humanity. I am an axiological thinker, value theorist. The science of goodness, worthiness, usefulness, valuableness, virtue, reliableness, accuracy, validity, morality, integrity, beneficialness, etc., etc. We axiologists have a value consciousness. And in general, we see the architecture of humanistic humanitarianism value in people that we see as dignity beings. Places and things are not. Axiology is a value theory. In its broadest sense, it involves areas of philosophy that are deemed to encompass some evaluative or evaluation aspect. Therefore, it crosses almost all domains in some way or another. Now for a more detailed terms as to what I am. I am an axiological atheist, an anti-theist, an anti-religionist, secularist, humanist, rationalist, writer, artist, poet, philosopher, advocate, activist with schooling in psychology, sociology, as well as I am an autodidact, self-taught in science, archaeology, anthropology, and philosophy. I promote science and am against pseudoscience, pseudohistory, pseudomorality, things that are found in religion.